Hey, everybody. Glad you're here with me tonight. A little bit later than usual, but we're here. So glad to be here with all of you. We're going to have a great conversation. So, yeah, let's do our thing.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. A lot going on. Happy New Year. It's the 16th day of January, and we're coming up on our big event, but I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, we're going to have our usual late night conversation here. So if you got something you want me to talk about in the second half of our show, send in a super chat here on YouTube or send a Rumble rant on Rumble. I do appreciate it if you would send super chats or Rumble rants. Give me something to talk about in the second half of the program. I always appreciate it when people do that. It helps us do what we've got to do. Send questions for the second half of the show. Now, the announcement of the hour. The event that we have been preparing for months is coming up. It is just a few days away. We are going to be in Washington, D.C. With Garland Nixon, with Jamar Thomas, with Dr. Wilmer Leon, Don DeBar, Peter Coffin, Reverend Milhan Stevens, a few other great guests and friends are going to be there. It's going to be a great event, and I'm really glad that it's happening. I really am. And it'll be the end or the culmination of a big day, a very big day for all of us in CPI, because we're going to be doing outreach. We've got a beautiful pamphlet to distribute to Trump supporters. We've got our big, beautiful banners of Trump and Kim shaking hands, kind of like the thing you see there. It's going to be a really big day for us on Monday. I'm heading to DC on Sunday, and there's a lot to do. And my wife has been making T-shirts with Trump and Kim shaking hands on them. And we've got gift bags for everybody. And we've got 2,000 pamphlets to hand out. And we've got, and good food. And Monday will be a big day for our organization. And I hope that you all will be there because it's always great. I'll tell you, Garland Nixon is much better live. I mean, he's great online too, but he's even better live. And the same for Jamar Thomas, the same for many of the personalities that will be there. They are so much better live. So you really don't want to miss. It's going to be a great day in DC. It's going to be really awesome. If you're coming, please, by all means, shoot us an email, shoot us a registration so that we know that you're coming. We will have food for the first 50 people, and it's not just going to be any food. We're talking prime rib or salmon, two very good options for your food. And there's going to be mashed potatoes for vegetarians, etc. It's going to be good stuff. So hope that you will be there. It would be really great to see you all. But for those of you who won't be there, number one, we would appreciate if you would send us a contribution to help offset the costs, because it's not cheap to put on one of these events. The hotel hit us with an $8,000 food minimum. So it's actually quite expensive to put on an event like this. So if you could help us with a donation, that'd be great. But also, in addition to that, it's going to be live streamed. Yes, we have not done that before in CPI. We have not live streamed our events before, but this is going to be different. We have decided to live stream this event. We have the tech capacity to do it. This event, our Inauguration Day event, is going to be live streamed. So you can watch it on this channel. Looks like you'll be able to watch it on Garland Nixon's channel. You'll be able to watch it on Jamarl Thomas's channel, Peter Coffin's channel. So yeah, that is pretty awesome as well. I think Monday is going to be a great day for our organization. Thanks ahead of time to everyone coming from out of town for the event. And there's a good crew of people coming in from out of town to help us put on the event. You know who you are, and you are loved and appreciated. We've got a great crew of folks here, and we're going to do something really, really special on Monday. Monday is going to be a historic day in the history of America. No question about it. What I'm really proud and happy about is that our organization has decided to take a role in history. We're not letting history take its course without us. We are trying to set an example by showing people that they can be active participants in history. You can be part of it. And we are going to make our mark on this historic day. We've got our pamphlet. We've got our banner. We're having our big event that night. We have decided we're going to be part of the historical process. So I'm really, really, really glad, really glad that all of you are going to be there, are going to be watching, etc. If you haven't given us a donation to cover the cost, please do so. Send us a donation. If you're coming, please register so we know you're coming. We can send you any updates or anything like that. Doors open at 5:30, Hilton Garden Inn, 2 blocks from the White House. Just 2 blocks from the White House. And it is going to be awesome. 815 14th Street Northwest, Hilton Garden Inn. It's a beautiful hotel. We've done stuff there before, and we will be doing stuff there once again. What can I say? It's going to be great. So I really hope that you will be there. Send us a registration. If you're coming, send us a donation. If you can't be there, I see Restless Native is going to donate. We appreciate that. Anyone else who can donate, we do appreciate donations to help the event happen. Many thanks to all the people that are working very, very hard to be there. One of our speakers got called. There's a special event happening in another part of the country. And he made very, very special arrangements to fly directly to DC. He's going to a special event in another part of the country, and then he's getting on a plane, and he's not flying home. He's flying to DC, and we're just really, really moved that that's happening. There's another friend of mine who has to buy a phone, has to borrow money from somebody, and he's buying a phone to come to the event. I mean, my goodness, talk about devotion. There's so much dedication. We are a solid network of people, the Center for Political Innovation, of very, very dedicated people who understand how important it is to build a movement against globalism, imperialism here in America. And we're willing to put up with stress. We're willing to put up with difficulties in order to build that movement. And we know the joy, the real joy of being part of a movement to change the course of history, to oppose the forces of darkness and evil, and to construct and build, to bring light into this world of darkness. We are so excited. We are so excited. And I'm so glad. I'm so proud of CPI and all the work we've done. We had a leadership meeting in early November, just as the election cycle was coming to its close. We had a leadership meeting. And we made some plans, and we have been hammering out those plans. We did our beautiful letter to Donald Trump that was very widely circulated. We are putting on this event and heading to the convention this summer. Wow, so many great things are happening. I don't even know. I'm just really, really excited. The Center for Political Innovation is marching ahead. I need you to be in DC if you can make it. I need you to donate if you can donate to offset the $8,000 that we're paying up front to do this event. It's more than $8,000 if you include the Airbnb, the air travel for people we have to fly in, and other things. So any contribution you can give to the GoFundMe is appreciated. Help spread the live stream around on that day. Get people watching, and yeah, we're heading to the inauguration because this was one of the most important elections in American history. And And because world peace is counting on big changes coming out of the White House, and because millions of people voted for Donald Trump for very, very good reasons, because they want to stop World War III, because they want to stop the FBI from violating our civil liberties. We have to be there in D.C. We can't miss this opportunity. We can't miss taking part in this historic event. So be there. Join us if you can make it. Now, we're just going to do a normal live stream tonight. I am going to give you my thoughts on a few things. So as I always say, if you've got something you would like me to talk about in the second half of the show, send me a super chat or a Rumble rant. That would be greatly appreciated on Rumble, or on YouTube, send a super chat, and then I will be able to answer your questions in the second half of our show. It should be good. So tonight, for my opening remarks, first opening remarks, then the roll call, then I answer people's questions. My opening remarks for tonight, I wanted to just reflect on a few things that have happened. So we all know, if you don't know, you're living under a rock. There was a peace deal that's been reached. Now, it hasn't been implemented. It's scheduled to go into effect on Sunday, but it looks like there will be a ceasefire in Gaza. And everyone's looking at this and saying, this was Trump. This was Trump. And apparently it's the terms of a deal that was offered in May. And the Biden administration just never had the courage to tell Netanyahu that he needed to implement this deal, to put the screws on Netanyahu. And apparently the negotiating team of the incoming administration did have the courage to put the screws on Netanyahu. And that Netanyahu was not afraid of Joe Biden, but Netanyahu was afraid of Donald Trump. And, Donald Trump made Netanyahu budge. And this is big because, Donald Trump has been talking like he's more pro-Israel than Biden is. But yet, he recently shared a video of Jeffrey Sachs, the economist, where he talked about the grip of the Israel lobby and their power and how they pushed the United States into wars. And it appears that Donald Trump has told Netanyahu what to do in ways that the Biden administration never had the courage to do. And so news of this deal is causing a big stir. People are saying maybe Trump will actually make peace. Imagine that. Donald Trump might actually do what he said he would do and make peace. And if he actually brings about this ceasefire in Gaza, he may do what he said he would do with Ukraine as well and resolve that conflict. And that maybe there is some hope that Donald Trump will do what he said he was going to do. And I think that's a reason for celebration. And that said, I think that's even more of a reason why the insane anti-Trump rally that has been planned, that I've been raising the alarm about. I went on George Galloway's show and I raised the alarm about it there, and I am raising the alarm about it here, and I made a YouTube video. This insane anti-Trump rally by the Party for Socialism and Liberation and the Answer Coalition should be called off immediately. They need to cancel this demonstration. We know what happened on January 6th in Washington, D.C., how they created like a false flag in order to hurt Trump. Now there's been a peace deal in Gaza, and I'm telling you, a lot of us are looking into this, and we smell something rotten in the state of Denmark, or rather in Washington, D.C. It's not going to be the day to be in the streets. And if there's anyone who's planning to go to that anti-Trump rally organized by Brian Becker, don't go. I'm telling you, do not go. Come to DC, right? We're going to be out doing outreach with our Trump Kim banner. We'll be with Trump supporters. We'll be at the parade, but do not go to that rally. I'm telling you, we saw what happened the last time Trump took the oath of office. Cars were torched across DC, all kinds of property damage. Thousands of people were arrested. including a journalist, an RT journalist, was arrested. And he wasn't part of the protest. He was just covering it, and they arrested him. And he had very serious criminal charges. I'm telling you, Brian Becker is leading a lot of people into danger on Monday. That rally should not happen. That rally should be called off. Do not help create a narrative that will be utilized to hurt the peace deal. Don't do it. Do not facilitate Antifa violence. Just don't do it, right? You've got to call off this demonstration, this rally. But we'll talk about that later. There's plenty more that we can say about it. But for tonight, there's different things that have happened in our alternative media world that have recently happened, today or yesterday, that we're just going to go over because I think they're worth noting. The first of which is that two individuals were dragged out of the U.S. State Department briefing that happened today. Antony Blinken, U.S. Secretary of State, he gave the final briefing of the Biden administration today. And he was disrupted. But I guess what is disrupted, right? There were two reporters who confronted him at the briefing and were violently removed. Now, the first was Sam Husseini, and the second was Max Blumenthal. So I'm going to show you both of their interactions. I guess we'll start with Max Blumenthal. Now, keep in mind, Max Blumenthal, he's well known in our circles. He does a lot of anti-imperialist journalism about Syria, about other issues, etc. But Max Blumenthal, he's not just, some random dude. He is the son of Sidney Blumenthal, who was an important advisor to Hillary and Bill Clinton. And he became a harsh critic of Israel. And he had this to say to Antony Blinken.
300 reporters in Gaza were on the receiving end of your bombs. Why did you keep the bombs flowing when we had a deal in May? We all knew we had a deal. Everyone in this room knows we had a deal, Tony, and you kept the bombs flowing. Why did you sacrifice the rules-based order on the mantle of your commitment to Zionism? Why did you allow my friends to be massacred? Why did you allow my friends' homes in Gaza to be destroyed when we had a deal in May? You helped destroy our religion, Judaism, by associating it with fascism. You waved the white flag before Netanyahu.
We'll have the time to take questions at the end.
You waved the white flag before Israeli fascism.
We'll have the time to take questions
Your
at the end.
Your father-in-law was an Israel lobbyist. Your grandfather was an Israel lobbyist. Are you compromised by Israel? Why did you allow the Holocaust of our time to happen? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? You too, Matt. You smirk through the whole thing every day. You smirk through a genocide.
Thank you.
So there you go. There you go. That was Max Blumenthal. And then there was Sam Husseini. I guess he was asking a question, and they dragged him out.
Three people. You pontificate about a free press. You pontificate about a free press. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. I am asking questions after being told by Matt Miller that he will not answer my questions until I'm asking questions. Wasn't the point of the May 31st statement to block the ICJ orders? You blocked the ICJ orders.
Please, sir, respect the process.
Oh, respect the process. Respect the process. While everybody from Amnesty International, to the ICJ is saying that Israel is doing genocide and extermination, and you're telling me to respect the process. Criminal. Why aren't you in The Hague? Why are?
Yeah. And keep in mind, this very same State Department likes to pound the podium about freedom of the press. And there you saw a journalist being dragged out when he tried to ask a question. I mean, that's utterly insane. I've never seen anything like that. I have reported from the State Department. I've asked questions and I have gone back and forth with them, but I was never dragged out of the room. My God, the way those briefings are set up, you ask your question, you can follow up and all that. And to see that response to A journalist asking a question is particularly ridiculous. And then many people have noted that in addition to, Sam Husseini being dragged out when he asked a question, Max Blumenthal being booted out of the room when he, confronted Antony Blinken like that, other people have noted that the response from CNN to the incident was a bit smug. And I don't know if smug is the right word, but the response of CNN to that whole incident was just downright bizarre. It was almost a sickening response from CNN to the whole incident. And it's just downright infuriating, just utterly downright infuriating to see the response, because this briefing from State Department spokesperson, State Department Secretary of State Antony Blinken was live on CNN, and this was their response to watching this happen live on TV.
Heard he was repeatedly interrupted by some cringeworthy heckling by activists. I mean, we were both sitting here pretty stunned, frankly. This is supposed to be a press conference with a room of journalists. Those were activists.
Well, everybody in that room is a credentialed reporter. Exactly. Everybody in that room, the only way you get in that room is if they let you in that room. Right? So she's saying those are activists. Those are activists. No, there is no way that you can be in the State Department briefing room if you are just some random activist, right? This wasn't a campaign rally. This wasn't a town hall. This was an official State Department press briefing. It's not a large room. There's not hundreds of people there. There's maybe 20, 30 people there at the most. So the idea that these are just activists, right off the bat, CNN is just lying right there. It wants to make it sound like no real reporter would ever have a question, or would ever feel this way about Gaza. But it gets worse.
Who were interrupting the Secretary of State when he initially was thanking the press and talking about the Israeli-Hamas deal.
Yeah, I think it's really surprising. A lot of our viewers will have seen protests on Capitol Hill, for example, during confirmation hearings, but it's very rare for something like that to happen at the State Department. I'm over there all the time in that briefing room, and you need to have a reason to be at the State Department. You need to have an appointment.
Exactly. Those were not activists. Those were credentialed reporters.
And you need to have press accreditation to come and go. So it's
yeah. So she just lied. She just lied when she called those activists.
Unclear who those people were. So I think there's a.
It's not unclear who they were. It's not unclear who they were. They were Max Blumenthal and Sam Husseini, and I believe they both identified themselves, because you have to identify yourself before you get called on. So no, it's not unclear who they were. And this is a thing that really, really annoys me. They pulled this crap with me one time. So you all know, I remember I asked Donald Trump a question at one of his press conferences, and he answered it. That was back in March of 2016 when he was first running for president. And then I tried to get his attention at another press conference that he had. And I will never forget when the New York Times called me a man claiming to be from RT. I'm not a man claiming to be from RT. I am not a man claiming to be from RT. I was credentialed to get in as an RT reporter. So when they called me a man claiming to be from RT, it was, they didn't want to say my name. They didn't want people to look into what I had to say, etc. And that's what they're doing to Max and Sam there. It's not clear who they were. Yes, it is very, very clear who they were. You just don't want people to look them up and find out what their perspective and their views might be. That's all that's going on there. It's not unclear who they are.
Question there. Allow me to be cheesy for a moment. This is a testament to American democracy and the way that American administrations approach their press rooms. They give accreditation to a wide number of journalists, and increasingly.
And if they ask questions, they drag them out with big, strong guys who violently drag them out of the room. How is that is that what that is? I'm sorry. How does this make democracy look good? Exactly. Some people ask you questions and they drag you out of the room rather than answering the question. And that's supposed to make democracy look good.
What I would call less mainstream journalists, more opinion journalists.
Less mainstream journalists, more opinion journalists. So apparently mainstream media, she just called it cringeworthy. What happened. She just gave her opinion at the very beginning of the broadcast, right? But I guess, I mean, this is ridiculous, right? If you don't have mainstream views, you must obviously be, bad, right? And that's their attitude, right? That if it's mainstream and supports the U.S. establishment, it's legit, and if it's not, it's not.
Who have the opportunity to go to the State Department, to go to the White House, and to ask questions of the representatives of that administration. So I'm always amazed whenever I go to these different press rooms about who's actually sitting there. It's not just Americans, it's people from all over the world.
Oh my gosh, how awful that they let people from other countries ask questions. I mean, it's not like Russia lets ABC News ask them oh wait, they do. I mean this is ridiculous, right? It's such a nice thing that the USA does by letting people from other countries' news agencies ask questions. Like, oh my gosh. And they're making it sound like maybe they shouldn't even do that anymore.
Turkey, from China, from South Korea, who get to ask questions of people like Matt Miller at the State Department or Karine Jean-Pierre.
Yeah, that's because U.S. government policy impacts those countries. In case you haven't noticed, there are a large number of U.S. troops stationed in South Korea. And the policies of the U.S. State Department have a big influence on the lives of people in South Korea. So, of course, reporters from South Korea get to ask questions, right? Of course, reporters from Turkey get to ask questions. Like, what is he talking about here? Like, it's like oh, it's a security concern. And, oh, they're so nice by letting them ask questions. How are they? What are you saying?
Here at the White House. And so there's a relatively open policy for now in these different press rooms.
Wow. I mean, that response from CNN is just completely shocking there. I mean, that they basically admitted there, they think it's a bad thing that media outlets that don't share the U.S. government perspective are allowed to put forward their views at U.S. government briefing. I mean, that's beyond me. When I see that, it's just like they let them come here. Well, geez, I mean, South Korea lets the American troops occupy their country. I mean, that response from CNN to what happened, I mean, they basically don't want you to hear alternative views. And, this kind of shocks me on some level, that they're so blatant about this, that like non-mainstream media is just not legitimate. And they're so nice to even let them be in the room. And then, they get dragged out, and instead of speaking up on their behalf and speaking about the outrage of them getting dragged out of the room, instead of doing that, they, instead have decided that, they want to go on about how nice they are to just let them be there to begin with. I mean, it's just, I saw that. I was just like, what am I watching? So that was certainly something. But we can continue. Look, Donald Trump appears to be the one who is responsible for this deal in Gaza. And the Biden administration has tried to take credit for it. But that's a joke, because if they're taking credit for it, why is it happening right before Trump takes office? We all know that Trump said the hostages must be returned before he takes office. And it looks like Trump really wants to be able to say that he did that. Trump really wants to be Ronald Reagan, right? 1981, Ronald Reagan was inaugurated. And that very day, the hostages that were held by the Iranians, the Iranians, took the U.S. embassy in Tehran, and they held a number of Americans hostage. And Jimmy Carter tried to get them returned and failed, tried to rescue them and failed, tried to, negotiate their release and failed. And Ronald Reagan took the oath of office, and the very day he took the oath of office, the hostages were returned. And we know that in the Fox News universe, Ronald Reagan is like a saint, right? Ronald Reagan is considered the greatest president who ever lived. He's this great figure, right? He's an idol of the neoconservative right wing. And even a lot of the Trumper folks, have illusions about Ronald Reagan. Now, my opinion of Ronald Reagan has actually evolved over the years. I used to have the standard leftist opinion that Ronald Reagan was just all no good. And I still, a lot of that I stand by, right? He funded the Taliban. It wasn't the Taliban. It was the Mujahideen and Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan to wage a civil war that killed, at least 1 million people in Afghanistan. Not good. He funded death squads and drug dealing gangs in Central America that brought crack to the United States to fight against the Sandinistas of Nicaragua, which are a government that I've been to Nicaragua, and they've been in power. They lost the elections in the early 90s. They won the elections again in 2006, and they've been in power since 2006. And Daniel Ortega, he's doing a great job. I've been down there. I've seen it. Nicaragua is a great example of a prosperous, innovationist country where they have a micro-entrepreneurship program where the government enables people to start their own businesses and gives them funding. They have paved all the roads. They've wiped out illiteracy in the country. They've electrified the entire country. They have free health care for everybody. They have a booming agricultural sector. They're completely food independent. They don't have to import any of their food because they have really built up the farming and agricultural sectors. The indigenous people of Nicaragua are very well treated. In fact, they even have autonomy. You have to get permission from the tribe to go into the areas, and they've done a lot to really aid the indigenous folks. And Nicaragua is a very successful society. They call it Christianity, socialism, and solidarity. I would say their socialism is much closer to what we believe in as the Center for Political Innovation. They're innovationists. They're not socialists like the woke left are. Abortion is totally illegal in Nicaragua. It's actually one of the strictest anti-abortion laws of any country in the world. They don't have gay marriage. So all the woke left people would, absolutely hate Nicaragua, and most of them do. Jacobin has sponsored protests against Nicaragua and such. But Nicaragua is nothing like the woke left. They are a conservative, pro-growth, innovationist government, and they don't allow the free market to run Nicaragua. They have a planned economy where the state controls the natural resources and the banks, and then it lends people as part of an economic plan to build up the country. Nicaragua is a very successful country, and it's very much, I look at that as an example of what we're trying to do with CPI and our vision. But Nicaragua, the government that's in power in Nicaragua, it was a government that was forced to wage a decade of war against Ronald Reagan. So Ronald Reagan was quite bad in a lot of ways, but my view of Ronald Reagan has become more nuanced over the years because I understand that Ronald Reagan was part of an upsurge against Jimmy Carter. And that my view of Reagan has become more nuanced because I have come to understand that Jimmy Carter's administration, and I know Jimmy Carter just died, and I refrained from talking this way around the Jimmy Carter death because what would be the point, right? I mean, I don't like dumping on people after their deaths. I really don't. If someone dies and you don't have anything nice to say, just keep your mouth shut, right? And that's what I did with Jimmy Carter, right? I don't think he was a good president at all, but I also didn't think it was time to get up and talk against him. I was certainly unimpressed with the number of anti-imperialist voices that praised him and he talked about Palestine. Yeah, he did that when he wasn't president of the United States. So what good did that do, right? And he talked nice about Venezuela. Yeah, when he wasn't president. Yeah, that's fine. He went and visited Fidel Castro. Again, when he wasn't president. He did a lot of good things when he was not president. But when he was president, he wrecked the American economy, and he's responsible for degrowth policies. He pushed policies. He published the Global 2000 report saying that overpopulation was the main thing that needed to be fought. He put Paul Volcker in charge of the Federal Reserve, and they completely deregulated the lending of money. All the states had usury laws until Jimmy Carter, but Jimmy Carter put Paul Volcker in charge of the Federal Reserve Bank, and he legalized all kinds of predatory lending that just wrecked the U.S. economy, horrendous inflation. And then on top of that, Jimmy Carter boycotted the 1980 Olympics. All kinds of athletes in America who had worked really, really hard to train for the Olympics couldn't go because Jimmy Carter wanted to make a statement against the Soviet Union. He didn't like the Soviet Union. And so to make a statement against the Soviet Union, he didn't allow any of our athletes to attend the Olympics, right? He didn't want the American people to see on TV the opening ceremony in the Soviet Union. And so he boycotted the Olympics in 1980. I mean, absolutely horrendous policies. He started a war in Afghanistan that Ronald Reagan continued. He set the Afghan trap. He started the covert war against Latin America. Jimmy Carter's presidency was pretty bad. And he went after the government of South Korea because they were trying to get nuclear weapons. They were going to get their own nuclear weapons, and then the U.S. troops would leave. And so he waged a whole vicious Korea Gate campaign against the government of South Korea and demonized the South Korean government, threw a lot of, Korean businessmen in jail who didn't do anything wrong, targeted religious groups from South Korea in a very horrendous way, demonized South Korean, government and business. I mean, it wasn't enough to hate North Korea. He had to go after South Korea as well. Just absolutely horrendous. So, Jimmy Carter's presidency was very, very bad. But the main thing about Jimmy Carter's presidency is that Jimmy Carter's presidency was pushing degrowth. It was pushing the idea that less is better. There was the OPEC boycott, energy scarcity. The world's oil supply was dropping. He gave that horrendous speech where he told the American people they should just accept being poorer. That owning things and having things will not bring you happiness, right? And, at the time, the price of heat in people's homes was very, very expensive. Right. And as president, he should have been negotiating to get the price of heat in the wintertime down. And what did he do? He put on a sweater and he said, I'm wearing a sweater rather than turning up the heat. And that's what you should do. Wear a sweater. We don't need energy. I mean, it was, American working families just got pummeled by the presidency of Jimmy Carter. He was a degrowth president, a degrowth CIA Rockefeller president who was wrecking the U.S. economy and he started a war in Afghanistan. He started a war in Central America. He started a war and he waged a war against the Islamic Republic of Iran was awful to Iran, he was very, very bad. So there was kind of an uprising against Jimmy Carter by the lower levels of capital. And Ronald Reagan came out of the hard right? He wasn't a neocon originally. He was part of the hard right. He was like a John Birch Society kind of guy. And Ronald Reagan was part of the military-industrial complex, and he was part of the hard right that wanted to reject degrowth. And he had a lot of momentum. And so they kind of forced Ronald Reagan to compromise and accept George Herbert Walker Bush as his running mate. And George Herbert Walker Bush was a mainstream Rockefeller, old New England money Republican. And then right after he took office, Ronald Reagan was shot by somebody who was like a personal friend of the Bush family, right? The guy who shot Ronald Reagan, John Hinckley, was the son of an oil company that was close to the Bush family's oil company. And John Hinckley is the only presidential attempted assassin in history who was found not guilty. He was found not guilty. How does that happen? How do how do you be found not guilty when you attempt a presidential assassination? That was wacky. How did that happen? And then, the guy who, John Hinckley, who almost killed Ronald Reagan, spent the rest of his life in a private mental hospital. And he can't give any interviews explaining what his motivation was. And that's pretty darn weird. And the whole thing. And so Ronald Reagan, to some degree or other, he was kind of like starting to be a little bit of a Trump, starting to be kind of a right-wing populist who was against the degrowth policies, but he was kind of commandeered. The Bush family, the Bush neocon CIA kind of got control of Ronald Reagan. So I don't demonize Ronald Reagan in the same way that I used to. I mean, he was definitely a stodgy conservative. He was definitely a hard right anti-communist, but he was largely, I think he was an improvement over Carter in many ways. Carter would have kept the U.S. economy, just screaming. I mean, Carter would have continued to just make things worse and implement degrowth and push toward all-out war against the Soviet Union. Reagan did a lot of hawkish things. He invaded Grenada. He funded, covert wars around the world, but he was putting the brakes on a lot of what Carter was doing. And that Jimmy Carter agenda, that Brzezinski degrowth, Silicon Valley fascism agenda, Malthusianism, that is the main danger. And that is, I think, what we're dealing with right now. And I don't hate Ronald Reagan on the same level that I do. Ronald Reagan kind of put the stops on the really, really evil things that Jimmy Carter was doing. And he continued. A lot of the things that Reagan did, he continued doing. He was continuing what Carter was doing. But regardless, I don't hate Ronald Reagan the same way that I used to. But I do know that in Republican, standard Republican circles, Ronald Reagan is a saint, right? He's just the greatest president. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, and he's just a saint. So because of that, because he's considered a saint in Republican circles, it's pretty clear to me that Donald Trump wants to be Reagan. And that, even just on the basis that a lot of people know this about Ronald Reagan, have nostalgia for Ronald Reagan, he wants to repeat that in their minds to some degree or other, right? A lot of the people who are big Trump supporters are older folks who liked Ronald Reagan when Reagan was president. Reagan was a very, very popular president. You remember he won the 1980 election in a landslide. He was reelected in a landslide in 1984. He was a very, very effective leader. And that, that slogan that Trump uses, "Make America Great Again," that was originally Reagan's slogan. It was "Let's make America great again." That was a Reagan slogan. And that a lot of the older folks, they have nostalgia for, quote, the good old days. And they remember when Ronald Reagan took office in 1981 and the hostages were returned. It was like, America's back. We don't have to feel ashamed of our country anymore. That's what Donald Trump is trying to appeal to, right? He's trying to appeal to that nostalgia. So it's clear to me that Donald Trump very much wants the hostages to be returned by the time he takes office. And he takes office on Monday. And this deal is supposed to go into effect on Sunday. So it appears to me that Donald Trump is very, very much trying to get that boost. Why? Because that's good for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is selfish. So what? That's great. That's great. Donald Trump is not concerned about keeping Benjamin Netanyahu happy and doing what's best for Israel. Donald Trump is concerned about Donald Trump. And he knows that if those hostages are returned on the inauguration day, that'll be such a win for the Trump administration in terms of PR that, if that ceasefire comes and those hostages, he'll say, look, I'm making peace around the world. There you go. One thing that I saw, folks, I find this hard. I can't even believe it. I can't even believe it. Right. And I don't know what's going to happen. I cannot predict the future. But I told you all that Benjamin Netanyahu was coming to Trump's inauguration. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu is canceled. He's not coming to Trump's inauguration. But who is? The closing benediction, the closing prayer of Donald Trump's inauguration is going to be given by a Shia Muslim imam. Let me repeat that. I have a hard time believing that this is true. But Donald Trump has presented himself as super pro-Israel. He's, he murdered Qasem Soleimani. He was the top general of Iran and all of this. But not only has Netanyahu decided not to come, but a Shia Muslim imam will be giving the closing prayer at Donald Trump's inauguration. That's huge. Has that ever happened before? Has any Muslim imam prayed at a presidential inauguration before? Has that ever happened? Number one. And then number two, it's not just any Muslim imam, it's a Shia. So that's that's the wing of Islam from Iran. That's the Iranian wing of Islam. An imam who practices the version of Islam that is practiced in the Islamic Republic of Iran is going to be giving the benediction at Donald Trump's inauguration. Now, that blows my mind. And I don't know if they're going to change their minds or what's going to happen, but I saw that report and I was shocked. I was just like, is this for real? And the fact that he stuck it to Netanyahu, right? That this deal, the deal to turn over the hostages was on the table. The deal to return the hostages was apparently on the table back in May, and Netanyahu was just like, nah, not going to do it. And the Biden White House could have, played hardball and said, Netanyahu, if you don't stop the bombing, we will, and they didn't do it. And it's the exact same deal that was offered in May, but this time it appears Trump has twisted Netanyahu's arm enough to make him accept the deal. And that's why it's going forward. And it's good for Donald Trump. I'm really glad. I'm glad that Donald Trump is not a team player for empire. I'm glad that Donald Trump is very, very selfish. And he wants to be remembered in history as a great leader. And it appears that not only did he make a ceasefire deal to return the hostages and end the fighting in Gaza, but it appears that he's going to have a Shia Muslim imam give the benediction at his inauguration. That's awesome. That's amazing. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. And it shows that we've been saying, look, there's potential for good things to happen with Trump. That's what we've been saying. That's been our message. Our message has never been that Trump is a savior on a white horse. Our message has never been that we guarantee Trump is going to be awesome. Our message is that with Trump, there is much more potential for moving toward world peace and moving away from the emerging low-wage police state than there is with Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And I think we can say at this point, with the ceasefire deal, with a Shia Muslim imam giving the benediction, it's looking that way to me. Sure is looking that way to me. But we shall see, right? I mean, this ceasefire deal hasn't gone through yet, but the fact that we're going to have an administration where Tulsi Gabbard is going to be director of national intelligence, where RFK is going to be running, the Department of Health, and where Kash Patel is going to be running the FBI. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, not thrilled. There's plenty of other people I'm not thrilled about, but there is at least a wing of the Trump administration that talks a very different tune on a lot of issues, like freedom of speech, like civil liberties, like World War III against Russia, like regime change wars against around the world. And it appears that they are going to have some role. And I think that's a good thing. And I think, again, there's potential for good. And that's what my speech will largely be about in D.C. So you should come to D.C. to watch my speech. You should come to D.C. to watch my presentation, because that's the presentation that I will be giving on Inauguration Day. We'll focus on this very topic. But we shall see. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. Everybody thought that when Barack Obama took office, it was going to be, change we can believe in. And look what happened, right? And the first Trump administration wasn't great. So let's just see what happens. But it's looking like everything, we were right in saying that there's potential under the Trump administration. Now, there's a couple other things I did want to touch on here tonight. We watched Max Blumenthal getting dragged out. We watched the CNN response. We watched Sam Husseini and him getting dragged out. There's a couple things that have happened. So as you all know, the TikTok ban is about to go into effect. Donald Trump has actually said he doesn't believe TikTok should be banned. But it appears the Supreme Court has upheld the TikTok ban. And that TikTok is going to be banned in a few days. In response to that, another app from China called Red Note, that's what they're calling it in English, but it's actually called Red Book. It's named after Mao Zedong's Little Red Book. Another app from China that is similar to TikTok called Red Note in English, but it's Red Book. It's the same name as the Little Red Book in China. Is now wildly popular. And Americans are getting on Red Note to learn about China. And it's kind of like a middle finger. It's like, oh, you don't want to let us have TikTok, right? TikTok is not available on the Chinese mainland. TikTok has censorship, has no censorship from the Chinese government because it has to be available to America. Like TikTok, they've bent over backwards to make it not Chinese oriented and not pushing Chinese government messages. Red Note, on the other hand, is a totally pro-Chinese Communist Party app. And so it's kind of a middle finger. Oh, you won't give us TikTok? Well, wait till you see Red Note. And so all these people are signing up for Red Note. So there's this video that's going around. And this video, this is one of those situations where there's this video is by a young woman who apparently was on TikTok. She's from a conservative MAGA family. But she's been on TikTok and she's been learning about communism and she's becoming more sympathetic to China. And so now she's on Red Note. And now in this video, she expresses how she feels about America, how she feels about China. And I'll be honest, this video is right on point in some ways, but in some ways it's off in very dangerous ways. I think it's just a matter of learning. And I hope that this video is sincere on this girl's part. I really hope that what she says in this video is sincere. I hope she means everything that she says. And that I hope that she is in the process of learning. She looks like she's started learning some things about the nature of imperialism and the U.S. government, etc. But she says a few things that I think she will unlearn through this process. But she's on a very, very good trajectory. I mean, she says a lot that I agree with, but then she says some things I don't totally agree with. So this is an American girl who's now on Red Note, sharing her perspective about China and some other things. And again, nuance. Here we go.
China has been lying to us about China for decades. Now that we've all gotten on Red Note and we can see the lifestyle that all of the Chinese people have, a lot of us Americans are fucking pissed. The price of going out to eat, the price of groceries, public transportation. And the people on Red Note are so fucking flabbergasted that we have to work 2 jobs just to keep our roof over our head. U.S. government, you fucked up big time, which is...
Yeah, and she's totally right there. I mean, our government has made it increasingly hard for us to survive. People say, well, Americans have so much more money than people in China. Yeah, but our money doesn't pay for anything. In China, they worked very, very, very hard to control the price of consumer goods, to control the price of food, to control the price of housing, so that it's within reach for the population. And yes, they're starting from a much lower level. And yes, they are getting, on average, much less money, but it's enough to live on. Whereas over here, we have so much money and there's so much wealth in U.S. society, but it's not within our reach. I mean, we can't afford housing. We can't afford, to pay our bills. Families are struggling to feed their kids. People are working 2 jobs. And, China is a country that's rising up from very extreme poverty. And yet the amount of, stress, financial stress that average people have to go through in China in order to survive and pay their bills, etc., is nil in comparison to what most American working people have to go through. She's absolutely right.
Surprise, because you do it constantly. Even if TikTok gets banned, I've seen enough. I have been woken up. I grew up fed propaganda that China is evil and that they treat their citizens like shit. I mean, I was raised by MAGA. It's the main reason why I feel so radicalized. American culture, American society is toxic.
And see, that's where she's losing me here.
Gross, poisonous.
And
they poison our food. They jack the prices up of everything. We don't get health care. We don't get good public transportation, even though we're all on the same fucking continent. We destroy the planet for money.
I definitely don't agree with that.
Power and control. Our government is funky as fuck on the left and on the right.
Okay, good point.
Don't get it twisted. This is a class war.
Okay.
And I will not be giving this fight up. We deserve sovereignty.
I mean, when she says American culture is toxic as fuck and all, I mean, girl, I get it. I get it. All right. I was once there. Right. And you see what a socialist economic system where the banks and the factories and the industries are controlled and forced to work in the interest of public good. You know, that seeing that that's better and seeing how you've been lied to. Right. You know, we're told that China's hell on earth and the government is this evil thing that's killing everybody and communism just makes everyone starve. And you know, you see that's a lie. And so then you're just kind of reacting. You're just saying, all right, well, fuck this country and all that. Well, girl, you know, and then you end by saying it's class war. Well, girl, I'm telling you, if you want to mobilize working class people in America, you can't be mobilizing them on the basis of hating their own country. Right. And that kind of alienation that she feels, this kind of utter rejection. It's like, you know, I'm mad about the way things are in America. I see that some other countries have some good ways of doing things. I see that the US government and the US media lie about these other countries a lot. So I'm going to wholeheartedly reject everything about America. Now, that is a recipe for political irrelevance. If you want to build a serious movement in America, you need to find good aspects of American culture and amplify them. And you need to understand, you know, in China, their system is called what? It's called socialism with Chinese characteristics. And if we're going to have socialism in America, we need to have socialism with American characteristics. And we need to find the good things about our own culture and our own people and celebrate them. And if your attitude is fuck America, why should any American listen to you? Right. And, you know, if you want to expatriate, you're totally welcome to do that. And people do that. I know a lot of people who expatriate. But overall, if we really want to make life better in America and we want America to not be an imperialist country, it is our responsibility to appeal to feelings and sentiments within the American culture and within the American spirit that can combat imperialism and can lead to building a more healthy and rational society where the needs of working families come first. And if your attitude is that kind of angry F America, why should any American listen to you? Right? You know, I mean, it's just not a good thing to do. And that, you know, but she'll learn that if she is serious about staying in this country and building a movement to change America. She said class war, right? She wants to fight for working families and working people against the imperialist monopolies that control our lives. She's going to learn that that approach is not a serious approach, right? That's very much an angsty, angry teenager approach. And I get it because I was there. I wouldn't have started on this road if I didn't feel like that for a really long time. But it took me a long time to realize that kind of pessimism and that kind of just utter contempt for the country you live in is not the attitude that any serious movement has, right? It's not the attitude that any serious movement has. If you're seriously talking about running the United States, you can't have the attitude of America is toxic, American culture is toxic, the American people are toxic. You can't feel that way. You have to want to change America out of love. You should love your own country. Mao, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, he loved China. And that's how he was able to build his mass movement to change China. You know, the communists of Russia, read Lenin's essay about great Russian patriotism. Lenin loved Russia. He was a patriot for Russia. And he told the Bolsheviks they should love Russia and that even their opposition to the Russian imperialist wars should be motivated by love, and that kind of angsty negativity that she's espousing, that is a very negative cycle. And I've talked about this a lot on these streams, and this is really kind of what defines CPI, is that we have made a decision not to get into that place. You know, and I hope that she comes out of it. I really do, because she's right on point. She is right on point. when it comes to how the Chinese government, they lie about it, how, the Chinese government controls the economy in order to make sure that working people can advance and have what they need in order to march the economy forward and raise people out of poverty. So she's right on point. But she can't get into that negative national nihilist place. And CPI, we've kind of defined ourselves in opposition to that. So I hope she learns. And look, everyone's on a journey. I'm on a journey. You're on a journey. The way I talked this year is not the way I talked last year. It's not the way I talked the year before that. We're all learning. We are all learning. So I hope that now that she has learned that a lot of what we are told about China is false, now that she has learned that our U.S. system is flawed in ways they never admit, I hope she now learns that in order to build a serious movement, you need to have a different approach. That if back 100 years ago when China was deeply poor, if all the people who wanted to change it had been going around saying Chinese culture is toxic, China sucks, no one would have listened to them. But rather, Mao Zedong, the Chinese Communist Party, they built a movement based on love for China, and that's how they were able to change their country entirely and make it the strong, powerful socialist society it is today. They've built a movement based on love of their people and love of their culture. And they developed a system, socialism with Chinese characteristics, designed to rescue their country. Right? This is important. There's nuance to all of this. And the problem with social media, I will say this, is that ultimately, a lot of people get on social media because they already think certain things. And they get on social media and they watch only content that validates what they already think. And it just says what they already think in a very emotional, over-the-top way. Well, I mean, I am too sincere in my beliefs to do that, right? I don't want you to come on here and hear what you already believe in a more shrill and emotional way. I want to teach you something. You're here to learn, and I may tell you things that you don't want to hear, that don't sit well with you, that you need to hear. And that's how you can tell that I am serious, because social media is full of phonies and frauds and grifters that are designed to lead you astray. I am here to tell you what you need to hear. I quote the New Testament of the Bible, ye shall know them by their fruits. In the second half, you will see the video of everything that we have accomplished this year. All that we did in 2024 is CPI. What other organization has done anything near that, right? If you look at it, our beliefs have enabled us to build a very effective organization that has done an awful lot. We did a huge amount in the year of 2024. We did a huge amount the year before that. We continue to carry out successful operations to promote and build anti-imperialism. We've got Inauguration Day coming up because we have a set of beliefs and a set of principles, and we're constantly learning and we're engaging with the world around us, and we do it, right? And there are other people that go viral and get a lot of attention, but they're not learning anything. Right. And, we don't do gimmicks at CPI. We really don't. I don't know. Maybe on a mini level, right? Right now, you can join CPI and your first month is free. Is that a gimmick? I don't think it's a gimmick. No, we don't do gimmicks in CPI, right? If we do something, it's because we mean it. It's because we mean it. And, we mean what we say what we mean, and we take this seriously. And, there is this culture that says you're not supposed to take anything seriously because that's not cool, right? It's like, that's very much the bread tube internet culture. Oh my God, you believe in something. You think right and wrong exists. That's cringe. Oh, I just want to smoke weed and play video games, man. I don't care about nothing. I'm so cool. Well, we're not playing that game here. We are not. And if you're embarrassed, if you're ashamed to not be playing the I'm so cool game, you're in the wrong place. We are very serious about what we believe. We take what we believe very seriously. We know things, we study things and all of that. And if you're just trying to be a cool pothead, a cool, I'm so cool because I don't care about nothing. Yeah, That's not us. That's not us, right? And I mean, that is not what we're doing here. We take what we are doing very, very seriously. And we carry out real operations because we take what we do very seriously, and we aim to carry out real operations, and we aim to do what we want to do. I want to work with people who take this seriously. I really don't want to work with people who are more concerned. Yeah, well, you're very cool, Noah. But I really don't want to work with people who are so concerned that somebody might think they're a nerd because they believe in something that they don't want to do activism. And there's a lot of people. CPI isn't for everybody. It's not for everybody, right? And CPI is not a spectator sport. Now, there's plenty of people who just watch. You're welcome to do that. There's plenty of people who just pay dues. They're welcome to do that. But we are not set up to have a huge membership that just pays dues. We're not set up to have a huge membership that just watches. I want you to be an activist. I want you to be an organizer. I want you to be part of the operations that we carry out. That is my goal for you. And if that means the show we put on makes you uncomfortable, if that means that that we don't come across in the ways that you might want, I mean, maybe this isn't for you. Again, we have a job to do that is very, 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 very important. We have a job to do that is very, very, very important. I have told this joke since the earliest days of this stream. This is going to be YouTube stream number 852, I believe. So I have been telling this joke since the beginning, and it just remains true. This joke remains true. And so I'm going to tell this joke once again. It's the file the papers joke. There's a man and the voice of God appears to him in a dream. He's a lawyer and says, "You must hire a communist to work at your law firm." And so he wakes up in a cold sweat and he says, "Wow, the voice of God just said I must hire a communist to work at my law firm. I'm going to go hire a communist." So he goes to the headquarters of the Communist Party and he finds a communist and he says, "I will pay you to work at my law firm." So he takes the guy to his office and he shows him all the papers that need to be filed. He says, "Go file the papers." And he goes away and he comes back at the end of the day and none of the papers have been filed. And the guy's just sitting there. And he says to him, "Why didn't you file the papers?" And he says, "Trump just got elected. The Republicans control Congress. Right now we must focus on defeating the ultra right wing. And maybe if we can defeat Trump and we can get Democrats into Congress, and maybe then we can start to file the papers. But right now we got to focus on opposing the Republicans." And he's like, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You're fired." He gets rid of that guy. Goes to the next guy. And he says, I'm gonna find some communists, and they're gonna be real communists, and they'll do the work for me. So he goes and he finds a Trotskyite and a Maoist. A Trotskyite and a Maoist. And he says, "You guys seem like real communists." Takes them to the office, says, "All right, file my papers." Goes away, comes back. They're not there, but some of the papers are missing. He goes outside, and the two guys are out on the street selling his papers. He says, "What are you doing?" He said, we're selling your papers, right? It's $2, and I just got $2, and one person gave me their phone number, and he said, I didn't ask you to sell my papers. I asked you to file my papers. You guys are ridiculous." He gets rid of them. So then he finds a communist YouTube personality, a communist social media guy. And he says, "All right, now, this guy is serious. He's a communist who's all over YouTube and he's streaming and making videos. We'll have that guy file my papers." So he takes the guy to the office, shows him the papers, goes away, and he comes back and he walks in and the papers are still not filed, but the guy is holding up his phone. And he's talking into his phone and he's talking shit about all the other communist YouTube streamers and how bad they are. And he starts saying that the law firm that he works at will not represent anyone that makes over $2,000 a year, and that they only hire transgender women of color. And he looks at him and he says, "What is wrong with you? Like, that's not true, first of all. And second of all, you haven't filed the papers." So he gets rid of the guy. And then finally, he finds somebody from the Party of Socialism and Liberation, PSL. And he says, all right, PSL. And he says, I've gone to all kinds of different communists. None of them have been able to file the papers. But you guys seem like you'll be good. You'll be able to file the papers. So he takes the PSL member to his office, shows him the papers, says, file these papers. He goes away. Comes back at the end of the day. Papers are still not filed. However, there's a leaflet sitting on the table. It says, rally in Times Square to file the papers. And he's like, oh, shit. Oh, man, not this. And so the guy goes to Times Square in New York City, and he sees a cage set up, surrounded by NYPD. And there's a crowd of 200 or 300 people, and they all have big signs that say, file the papers. And he's like, oh, shit. And they all start chanting, file the papers, file the papers, file the papers. And he's like, oh, my God. And then a transgender person is on the stage, and they're like, the fight of transgender people is the fight to file the papers. And everyone goes, yay. And then a Palestinian gets up, and they get on the stage, and they say, the fight of the Palestinians is the fight to file the papers. And everyone goes, yay! And they're chanting, file the papers, file the papers. And the guy walks up to the guy and he says, what is wrong with you communists? I have gone to 4 different types of communists. I went to a Communist Party member. I went to a Maoist and a Trotskyite. I went to a communist YouTube personality. And now I've gone to you from the Party of Socialism and Liberation. None of you guys have been able to file the papers. What is wrong with you guys? And the PSL member gets very offended. And he looks at him and he says, how dare you compare me to those other communists? How dare you compare me to those other groups? He says, what do you mean? He says, all the other groups, they only talked about filing the papers. But we're the group that actually does something. And that's where we're at. Nobody will just file the papers. We need to build a real anti-imperialist movement in this country to reach average working people, to talk about how we can move our country away from being imperialist. We need to get the job done. And literally nobody wants to do the job, right? I mean, I could have thrown the PCUSA in there. They have Zoom calls about Stalin. There was a PCUSA member, very skilled person with a lot of skills. I said to them, where do you see yourself in 5 years? They said, I see myself rising up the ranks of the PCUSA. I said, what does that mean? You're going to be in charge of the Zoom calls about Stalin? PCUSA does not literally do anything, right? And it's like, I meet people, they're like, I'm going to be the leader of PSL. And what does that mean, right? That you'll have little rallies around whatever the latest trendy liberal cause is and tail after whatever the liberals are doing. I mean, or I'm going to rise up the ranks of the Communist Party USA. What does the Communist Party USA do? Campaign for Democrats? It's set up so that you're basically just a regular Democrat, and you go to a club meeting once a month to talk about being a regular Democrat. There is none of these groups are doing what urgently needs to be done. None of them. None of them do anything. I mean, they are not going out there and doing what we are actually doing, which is we're going to people with a message about how we can break our country free from imperialism. And we have got a message that can actually win people over. That is what we are trying to do. And none of these groups are doing it. And it frustrates me that it just seems like there is such an elaborate apparatus that has been created to make sure that you just stay on a hamster wheel. Right? The PSL liberal rallies, they are a hamster wheel. And at this point, people who go to liberal rallies are less anti-war and less anti-FBI than average Americans are. The CPUSA is a hamster wheel set up so that you just campaign for the Democrats. These groups, the social media stuff, they, anyone who does anything real is cringe. And I mean, it's all just a hamster wheel to keep you from doing what actually needs to be done. We in CPI, we said, hey, Donald Trump, the best thing that Donald Trump did was that he met with Kim Jong-un. Wouldn't it be great if we could amplify that message during the election? So what did we do? What did we do? We got a huge banner printed, and we marched through the streets of New York City with our huge banner here's me and Noah with the banner. We were in Central Park, and we marched through the streets of New York City with our huge banner. We did it. We accomplished more than any of these other groups have ever accomplished in their entire existence. This is worth 1,000, like everything PCUSA has done in 20 years could not amount to this. All kinds of normal people walked by this banner and saw Trump shaking hands with Kim and saw our message, only peace can make America great again. Right? And 3 different times we were out in the streets of New York City with this banner, engaging with people. That's an accomplishment. What else did we do? Kamala Harris was running for president. We wrote a book about Kamala Harris. And that book was so threatening because of the information it had about her and the information that they banned it from Amazon, and it caused a huge amount of outrage. So what did we do? We printed 1,000 copies of this book and distributed 1,000 copies at the Democratic National Convention. 1,000 people got a free book handed to them about the truth about who Kamala Harris really is. That's pretty cool, right? We did it. Again, that's worth far more, right? We're headed to the inauguration. We've got a special pamphlet printed about, a new day for America and what imperialism is. And we're going to hand out 1,000, 2,000. We have 2,000 copies of our inauguration day pamphlet to hand out. And people are going to read it and they're going to learn. We're doing it. We're actually doing anti-imperialism. And other people are talking shit on social media, and other people are having Zoom calls about Stalin, and we're actually doing it. And I guess it frustrates me to see how much elaborate apparatus has been set up to keep people from doing things that can actually make a difference. We went to the World Youth Festival. We saw that the Uhuru movement was facing political repression, and so we organized and mobilized to support them, for Christ's sakes. I mean, this group of black revolutionaries was indicted, was facing imprisonment just for preaching an anti-imperialist message, and we actually did something. We went to their court dates. We raised their case at the United Nations. We raised their case in Russia. We had rallies to support them. We raised their case everywhere we possibly could. We raised money. We did everything we could to support the Uhuru movement. We did something. We saw they were trying to imprison a group of black revolutionaries for their anti-imperialist views, so we did something. You can do things. And this is really what what frustrates me. And I think this is kind of where my difference with this young woman who's on there about China is that a lot of people that get into anti-imperialist politics, they get into this space of thinking that they can't do anything. And that's when that girl's like, oh, this culture, America is toxic. And of course she's saying that. She thinks she can't do anything. But if you actually put your mind to it, you can actually do things that change the course of history. Our banner, when we carried the Trump and Kim banner outside of the Trump rally in Madison Square Garden, we were featured in New Yorker magazine. New Yorker magazine commented on the fact that we were there, and they quoted me talking about only peace can make America great again. We have made a huge difference by going and meeting people, by engaging. We have actually made a difference, and so can you. And I am here to help you do that. And there's a lot of people screwing around and a lot of people doing other things. And we're doing it. We're doing it. I will say it requires patience. It requires patience. Look, this summer, right? This is out there. It's not like set in stone yet, but it's been agreed upon. So we're doing our convention, our national convention. It's happening July 12th, 2025 in Chicago. Very exciting. But we have decided, because generally when we do a convention, we have a bunch of people come in from out of town. This year, instead of just having it be a bunch of people coming in from out of town, we're doing a 7-day workshop, right? And part of that 7-day workshop will be the convention. But it's going to be 7 days of activity. The 3 days beforehand, 4 days afterwards, right? We're doing a 7-day workshop. And at that, the reason we want people there for 7 days this summer, first of all, summer is a good time because students are not in school. Teachers are not teaching. University people are not in university. I mean, people are a little more free in the summertime. July is a month when a lot of people are chilling and all of that. The reason we're doing this 7-day workshop is because we want to really get to know a group of people. And we are figuring out that once you have completed the 7-day workshop, you will get a new rank in CPI. You won't just be a regular CPI member. You will be a member who has reached a certain level. Because we have a lot of people who help us do operations and are very active and involved and are on every Zoom call. But I feel like we can really solidify the relationship with a lot of people if we do a 7-day workshop with them. 7 days is actually quite a bit of time. A week is quite a bit of time. And we will have a week of activities planned, housing and activities, etc. And the 7-day workshop that we are planning will be an opportunity for us to really get to know a crew of people. And that once you complete the 7-day workshop, you will, we don't exactly know exactly what the new designation will be, but that'll be like earning a merit badge in CPI. That'll be like you've reached a certain rank because you worked with us for 7 days. You've gone to some very important classes. You've carried out very important tasks, and we have gotten to know you throughout those 7 days. So we're going to do a 7-day workshop this summer. It's going to be very important. And I hope that as many members will come to that 7-day workshop as possible. And that when you get through the workshop, you will get something, right? It won't be like, oh, that was fun and it's over. No, you will be designated. You will be certified in some way once you've completed the 7-day workshop. Right? Because right now CPI is a little bit of a free-for-all, right? You can join on the website. Anyone can join, $15 a month. Right now we have a special deal where it's first month free. But it doesn't need to be a free-for-all. CPI shouldn't be a free-for-all, right? We should be teaching and training people. And when people have had a certain level of training, that should be recognized. And there should be different levels. So that's what we're doing. So it's very exciting, very, very exciting what we're doing. So, yeah, there will be some kind of graduation for people who make it through the 7-day workshop. I'm very excited about that. I'm very, very, very excited about that. So everything is coming together. Look, next week is going to be really important. Our Washington, D.C. event is going to be very, very, very important. Please be there if you can. Please help promote it. Please donate to our inauguration fund if you can. That would be great. I believe Monday is going to be an important day in the history of America. And I'm really proud that our organization will be part of history on Monday. Who knows what Monday will bring, but I think Monday will be a further step in a good direction for our country. So, yeah, there we go. So, folks, on that note, we'll do the roll call, names and locations. Then we'll see where we're at. We've got 1 Rumble rant and we've got 2 super chats. I really need people to send in super chats, right? Lately, the super chats revenue, people are watching these streams, but I really need super chats, right? I mean, I really need super chats. So please send super chats. It's a little bit frustrating to me because I don't have much to talk about and all of that. So we got Mark Jones in Utica, New York. We got Penny in Minnesota. Very, very good. Minnesota workshop coming up in February. Penny's been working very hard on that, and we do appreciate her hard work. Ian Chester in England. Welcome, Ian. Courtney in Virginia. Balthazar in Oakland. Bob in Troy, New York. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Master Jack from South Africa. Gabby in Chicago. Boston, Massachusetts. Noah. Shout out to Noah. Jenny in Cincinnati. Jacob in Wisconsin. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Alex in Brazil. John McCarthy in Chicago. Welcome, welcome, welcome. April and Chris in Salt Lake City. Philip, hi. Brooklyn in the house. Psyched for Monday. It's going to be awesome. Luca in Singapore. Welcome, welcome, welcome. San Antonio, Texas. Ricky. Names and locations. Dahe in Seattle. Dahe, welcome, 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 Dahe. Good to have you with us. Dahe is great. He does great work. Valen in South Carolina. Welcome, 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 Valen. Good to have you with us. Names and locations. Colin in Greensboro. Good to have you. Rory in St. Louis, Missouri. Richard in Woodland. You see my rant. I do. I don't see your rant, Richard. See my rant. I don't see your rant. But anyway, I see one question, one Rumble rant, and I don't think it's from you. I think no, it is Thomas Sowell and Black Conservatism Origins. Yeah, I see that. Okay, I see it. Gavin in Woketon, Illinois. Woketown. I get it. I'm joking though. I called it Woketon. I've never been to Woketon. B in Cleveland. Viva Palestina, Tijuana, Mexico. All right. Well, listen, folks. So if you haven't seen it, I want to show you our letter to Donald Trump, which I'm very, very proud of. While I'm showing our letter to Trump, which I mean, it's really a great piece. Peter Coffin did an amazing job with the editing. Everyone who's in it did an amazing job speaking and stuff. But I really, really want to show you our letter to Trump, because this is a really great thing that CPI did right after the election. We did this very well put together letter to Trump. So give this a watch. Send questions. Please send super chat questions, because it's needed. Get me talking. So yeah, send some super chats. I'm going to put this on. I'm going to take a short break, get some more unnamed water beverage, and then I'll answer questions when I get back. I'll start with Richard's question that's in the Rumble, and then from there we'll do the questions, the super chats. Please send more super chats, but here we go.
Official CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected president.
Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House.
A sweeping and stunning victory, unlike any in our history.
Donald Trump has won the presidency for a second time.
Donald Trump, a convicted felon who survived 2 assassination attempts, making a remarkable comeback to become the next president of the United States.
He's so evil! Nazi! Break out the boat!
It was a terrible night.
Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Dear President Donald Trump, we've all spent the last year being told Donald Trump can never win again.
But as we went and spoke with regular voters,
that's never been what they seem to think.
As we predicted, you won.
Because the system that dominates the world, the system these people live in, is in complete crisis.
Imperialism, the old order of the world ruled by big banks and monopolies, is becoming more unstable by the day.
It is relentlessly driving working families' living standards down
and pushing us towards new wars.
Americans voted for you because you promised peace.
You promised peace.
You promised peace.
They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
Americans voted for you because you promised swift government action to improve their lives.
Together we can truly make America great again for all Americans. African American, Hispanic American, Asian American, Arab American, Muslim American. Success is going to bring us together.
Americans voted for you because you promised to protect our freedoms.
We want to have security. We want to have things be good, safe. I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve.
Americans voted for you because you promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
You promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
To the rich and the greedy.
You promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
And put the people's needs first.
And put our needs first.
I want you to imagine how much better our future can be if we declare independence from the elites who led us from one financial and foreign policy disaster to another.
While many exclusively focus on the negative realities of a political campaign, we remember your Quantum Leap speech, where you rolled out some extraordinary ideas for completely rebuilding this country.
Past generations of Americans pursued big dreams and daring projects that once seemed absolutely impossible. They transformed American life with the interstate highway system. Magnificent it was. And they launched a vast network of satellites into orbit all around the Earth. But today, our country has lost its boldness. Under my leadership, we will get it back in a very big way. Our objective will be a quantum leap in the American standard of living.
We're writing this letter to let you know who we are.
We are the Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political Innovation.
We are the Center for Political
The Center for Political
We
Innovation.
are the Center for Political
The
Innovation.
Center for Political
The
Innovation.
Center for Political Innovation.
We are the Center for Political Innovation.
We're innovationist
And anti-imperialist.
We are patriotic Americans.
You want to see the power of Wall Street and London defeated.
And a whole new America rebuilt on new foundations.
We exposed Kamala Harris and how dangerous she was back in 2020 with a book called Kamala Harris and the Future of America.
The book was on sale for 4 years without incident.
Then the very day she became the nominee, on July 22nd, Amazon banned our book without explanation.
They did not want people to hear the truth about her awful record. They did not want people to see how she was tied to the regime change apparatus and how she had been carefully groomed by the malevolent forces that ran the Hillary Clinton State Department.
Amazon banned our book for 7 days. Banning our book backfired. Many thousands of copies sold from July to November as people hungered for the truth about the woman we called the most dangerous presidential candidate in history.
We are proud to have spread truth about Kamala Harris and who she really is.
In the final month before the election, we were on the streets of New York City with a huge banner that said, "Only peace can make America great again."
We highlighted what we consider to be your greatest moment in your first term as president when you offered a hand of friendship to North Korea.
Our organization gives voice to what the overwhelming majority of Americans want.
Jobs, schools, economic development, and, most of all, an end to all the wars.
While many of your biggest supporters are tied to Israel, as a matter of basic human morality, you must stop the slaughter in Gaza.
As the president, you will have the power to cut off the money. The $18 million of our tax money that goes into Israel every day is $18 million too much.
You have the power to stand up to Netanyahu and the Israel lobby.
And the overwhelming majority of your supporters will back you in doing so.
You can end the war in Ukraine as well, as you have promised to do.
Russia is ready to sit down with you and make a deal.
You can lift the sanctions that are devaluing the US dollar.
You can cut off the billions of dollars in tax money that has been dumped into death and destruction.
There's an explosion of economic growth happening in Eurasia right now.
China's Belt and Road Initiative, Russia's Eurasian Economic Union, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and BRICS
are all full of new wealth being generated as people rise out of poverty with electrification, railway, and new living conditions.
America can get in on the action, and you can create a legacy of growth and prosperity by pushing to make it happen.
That money and technological progress doesn't need to be for everyone but us.
A share can come to our communities across the heartland and south that have been devastated by the globalist monopolies.
America can join the new world of growth and optimism and leave behind the dying world of globalist bankers.
A big step toward making that happen would be fulfilling the vision first put forward by one of Abraham Lincoln's advisors.
Build the Peace Bridge, connecting Alaska to the Russian Far East. Building that bridge over the Bering Strait would create millions of jobs and connect the United States to the wave of economic expansion happening in that region.
You also have the power to step in and protect Americans from the deep state.
You can make Facebook, YouTube, and other social media outlets stop censoring Americans who speak up.
You can free Ross Ulbricht. You can free Leonard Peltier.
We have paid particular attention to the Uhuru Three, Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, and Omali Yeshitela.
Tucker Carlson highlighted their case in his program.
As part of the liberal Russia hysteria, they got charged with being foreign agents for their work building economic development among black people in Florida and Missouri.
You can pardon them for the absurd conspiracy conviction they received after being acquitted of the primary charge of being Russian agents.
You can repeal the absurd Foreign Agents Registration Act, a vaguely worded law
used to prosecute those who want to change U.S. foreign policy or do business overseas.
We know you can't do this alone. If you do, as you have promised, and clash with the deep state and the big monopolies,
you'll soon realize that there is one ally you desperately need: the American people.
The bulk of the population, those who voted for you because they just can't take it anymore, need to be pushed into action.
The American people are like a sleeping lion that can awaken and roar louder than ever when the time is right.
The country needs a mass movement. It's happened before, and it will happen again.
We defeated the British Empire. We smashed the slaveocracy of plantation owners. We built the labor unions and won women the right to vote. We ended the Vietnam War, and we destroyed legal segregation.
The changes that the overwhelming majority of the American people want will not come about as a result of some savior in the White House.
No matter how adept of a political leader you might be.
The masses of people in their millions are the makers of history.
And it will take an upsurge of democratic participation to bring about what this country really needs.
A government of action.
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 To fight for working families.
You are in a very important position as arguably the most powerful person in the world right now.
President of the United States.
We urge you to stop the emerging low-wage police state. We urge you to stop the march towards World War III.
We urge you to help energize and mobilize a population to assert their will over the greed of the rich and powerful.
We're building a movement of anti-imperialists here in America.
People who love their neighborhoods, cities, and communities and see that protecting them is more urgent now than ever.
We consistently look to the future optimistically and see many promising possibilities in your re-election.
However, as with all politicians, especially presidents, we cannot and will not offer blind support.
Our goals are peace and prosperity for all, and we won't hesitate to criticize you if you stand in the way.
Millions and millions of working families are counting on you, Donald.
Not just here in the U.S., but around the world.
Find the strength within yourself and your relationship with God to be the hero the world desperately needs.
It may not be your first instinct, and it may even fly in the face of much of what you've said, believed, and even promised.
But it is a surefire way to find your name imprinted in the history books for centuries.
We train our members to understand the world and how it works. More importantly, how to change things.
You will hear a lot from us in the next 4 years.
And if and when you stand up to the forces of darkness and empire, we will always have your back. See you at the inauguration. All right. So, at this point, that was a great letter that we wrote to Trump. Wow, that's good. We'll check that out. I will check that out for sure. And thank you, Rickshaw. I'm glad that my words were heard. I'm glad that, that somebody heard what I had to say. I'll watch that. I'm glad, if no one had reacted to what I said, that would have been much more disappointing than I'm glad I made somebody angry. I made somebody think, and we'll see what happens on Inauguration Day. But yeah. So, all right. So, we got a few more Rumble rants that have come in. Thomas Sowell, okay, we've got a couple more Rumble rants. We got one more super chat. Please send super chats. Give me something to talk about. All right. So the first super chat, Thomas Sowell and Black conservatism origins. I mean, Black people can be conservative. I mean, there's no like Black conservative movements. You know what I'm saying? I mean, black people can be conservative, they can be liberal, right? It's not widely acknowledged nowadays, but it is true that to some degree, the black community has always been slightly more socially conservative than the white community. I think at this point, support for gay marriage in the black community is about 50-50. Wasn't always that way, you know, and that, you know, while black people tend to be economically much more to the left of white people, and they tend to be much more anti-imperialist because they're critical of U.S. wars and such. You know, social conservatism in the black community certainly exists. I mean, you know, there's no when you talk about the origins of black conservatives, you know, you can talk about the origins of the neocons, you can talk about the new left and all that, but there's always been black conservatives. There's a couple things that I've had some interesting experiences with black conservatives. When I was living in Cleveland, the Republican candidate for governor of Ohio was Kenneth Blackwell, and he was an African-American conservative, Kenneth Blackwell. And there were a number of black nationalists who supported him. And it wasn't the Nation of Islam, but it was like black Muslim organizations that had previously been affiliated. You know, when the original Nation of Islam liquidated after Elijah Muhammad died, Elijah Muhammad's son became the leader, and then they became Sunni Muslims. There's a number of African-American mosques in the United States that trace their roots back to the Nation of Islam, but are not the Nation of Islam anymore. They're Sunnis. And there were a number of Sunni Muslims who endorsed Kenneth Blackwell because he was against abortion, because he was against gay marriage. And I remember I went there, and I went to events in the black community in Cleveland, and I would hear, and in some cases, you know, these black nationalists who were endorsing the Republicans were more anti-imperialist. The Cleveland city government was run by the Democrats that were notoriously corrupt. And so, like, the more nationalist-oriented black folks, some of which that were in, you know, Islamic, you know, mosques and were Muslims, some of them voted Republican because they were against the establishment, they were against gay marriage. And if you talk to them, they overall had an anti-imperialist worldview, and they were more aligned with Republicans. They wanted black small businesses. But they had an anti-war perspective. They were against Israel. They supported the Palestinians. They didn't support Bush in the wars, but their attitude was that the Democrats are corrupt. And, you know, it was almost kind of like a semi-libertarian thing. Like, we want to just kind of have independent black capitalism, and we want the government out, and we're socially conservative. And you can see how there's always been a layer of like black nationalist conservatives. Right, that has always existed to some degree or other. I believe CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, that was one of the main civil rights groups in the 1960s. But CORE has become a largely Republican organization. CORE. If you look at what they are now, they are largely black Republicans, many of which are Sunni Muslims. They're not the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam, it was Minister Farrakhan restarted the Nation of Islam in the late 70s. And that became a special thing. But there are a lot of like black Muslim conservatives, black nationalist Muslim conservatives that exist. And so that's one strand. And I remember dealing with them when I was in Cleveland. And seeing them, I was involved. There was an organization in Cleveland that was like the center of activism in East Cleveland. It was called Black on Black Crime Incorporated. It was run by the owner of a barber shop named Art McCoy. He was the owner of a barber shop. He was a black small business owner who was a nationalist. He was a black nationalist, and he was anti-imperialist. And, he had this organization that had weekly meetings where there'd be 80, 90 people there every week to talk about community issues. It was, community empowerment. And many of the people that attended regularly Art McCoy's meetings that talked about police brutality, that talked about community issues, a lot of them were Republicans. But they weren't, Candace Owens black Republicans. They were black nationalists who were socially conservative and were I don't know, they didn't like the Democratic Party. They believed in black small businesses, black capitalism, etc. And that exists. That's a current that, if you're white in America, you wouldn't really know that it exists. But if you go to urban centers, you will often find a layer of kind of black nationalist conservatives. That's a layer of the population that you wouldn't know about. And I don't know that all of them are conservatives. Many of them were Obama supporters when Obama ran because they felt it was good for the black community that he be a leader. But then there's a layer of black people who voted for Trump of a similar perspective, right? When you talk about Thomas Sowell, right, you think of Thomas Sowell, you're thinking of a layer of, just kind of, who's the guy he was the head of the Republican National Committee, Christopher Steele, I think, or no, is it Christopher Steele? Right. And he was the head of the Republican National Committee for a while. And, there's a layer of kind of like just, your standard neocon Fox News folks who happen to be African-American. That exists. And that's what I put Thomas Sowell in that category. However, there is another layer of folks that are Republican aligned, but are nationalistic. And that may be why Candace Owens has gone in the direction that she has gone. Candace Owens, when she started out, she was there with Charlie Kirk, and she just seemed like your typical conservative, and she happened to be a black woman. But now Candace Owens is very anti-Israel and is very much she's aligned herself with traditionalist Catholics. So she's not a Muslim. She's not a Muslim, and she's not a black nationalist, but she is often talking about different conspiracies behind Zionism, and she's very anti-Israel, and she's certainly critical of U.S. foreign policy when it comes to Russia and other things. And like Candace Owens, it may be that a percentage of her audience are black conservatives of this other variety that I am mentioning. I remember when I was in Cleveland, I think it was like every Friday, was it Friday or Saturday? They would have what they called the hip hop workshop. And my job, I was a member of the Workers' World Party, and my job was to go to the hip hop workshop in East Cleveland every Saturday and hand out the communist newspaper. And I would go, and I remember that they would be different performers would get up. And there was a black woman who was a very, very religious Muslim. She was a Sunni of some variety. And she wore full hijab. And she played drums, and her two daughters would play drums alongside of her. And they would like sit there, and the daughters would be in hijab and she was in hijab, and they would play the drums, and they would play the drums about, we need peace in the hood because it is the command of Allah that we have peace in the hood and we end black on black violence. And I remember every week they would get up and play the same song, and her daughters, who weren't very old, they were, less than 10 years old, would be there playing they'd have a drum, they'd each have a drum, and she would have a drum, and they would play Peace in the Hood. And I mean, those folks were conservative. I'll just tell you that much. I mean, they're full hijab. I'm sure they were very opposed to abortion, very opposed to gay marriage and such, and very nationalistic in their outlook. And I'm sure they didn't support the invasion of Iraq. And I'm sure they didn't, they certainly didn't support LGBT stuff. But if you talk to them, they probably, were more sympathetic with Gaddafi, more sympathetic with Saddam Hussein. They definitely didn't support Israel. So what are those folks? Those are, black nationalist conservatives, and that, even now in New York, I'll occasionally see the Black Hebrew Israelites, right? You'll see them, right? That's a group that, again, I think more people know about the Black Hebrew Israelites because of the fact that they are very visible, right? The last time I ran into the Black Hebrew Israelites, I was at Atlantic Mall in downtown Brooklyn. And I was waiting for a friend. I don't know what I was doing, but out in front of Atlantic Mall, there they were, the Black Hebrew Israelites. Now, they are not Muslims. They're a group of black people that feel that black people are the true Jews. That they interpret the Bible to mean that when the Bible is talking about Moses and Abraham, it's talking about black people. And they're black nationalists in their orientation. And I think they are probably Republicans. They support Israel for one. They are socially conservative. They use quite colorful language when they, about people they disagree with. They'll use certainly very politically incorrect language, and they're quite angry. And if you listen to their rhetoric and they talk about, they use, but I mean, are those folks leftists? No. And it's funny because I think a lot of your standard conservatives think those people are leftists. They think those people are communists or leftists. They certainly, I would suspect they probably don't believe in free market capitalism, but maybe they do. Maybe they believe that the government should keep its hands off black people so they can open their own businesses. So they'd be in favor of like market liberalization. There are different layers to this. When you talk about black conservatives, you're talking about a wide variety of different things. I have heard that the woke folks in the African American community and white folks, they call black nationalists who are not liberals. They call them hotips because that's a slur, and that's because of the fact that many of them talk about the great Egyptian scientist Imhotep, apparently a great scientist in ancient Egypt who made great breakthroughs when it came to astronomy and geometry, etc. It was called Imhotep. And he's a real person who existed in ancient Egypt. He was like the Leonardo da Vinci of ancient Egypt. He was just this kind of Renaissance man who was very key in bringing forth a lot of great breakthroughs in mathematics and astronomy and physics and such in ancient Egypt, Imhotep. And black nationalists will talk about him a lot because he gets glossed over. I never learned about Imhotep in school, right? The way that I first learned about Imhotep was that I remember when the movie The Mummy came out, right? I think they made a remake of the Hollywood movie The Mummy, and they named the mummy, the mummy, the monster, they named him Imhotep. And so I was Googling something about that when the internet was new, and I discovered that there really was someone named Imhotep, and that he was a great ancient Egyptian scientist, etc. I never would have learned that because we never in school, we learned about ancient Egypt. We learned about the Upper Kingdom and the Lower Kingdom and the Nile Delta. We never learned about Imhotep. Now, some people debate, were the ancient Egyptians black or not? And that's a really contested point. And there's somebody I met, I've known, who actually worked at the Egyptology department of the New York Museum of Art. And they talked about how frequently, almost every day, they will get a phone call asking, were the ancient Egyptians black or not? And we do not know. And it is hotly debated. Some people say the ancient Egyptians were Arabs. They were in Africa. Egypt is on the African continent. Some people say they were North African Arabs. Others maintain that they were black. They were Africans. They were dark-skinned Africans. And we honestly do not know because we weren't there and it was thousands of years. And people say, well, you look at Egypt now, it's an Arab country. Yeah. But has it been the same people living there for thousands and thousands of years? We don't know. There is a moment in American television that is very widely referenced. A lot of people talk about this. Black nationalists talk about it. Anti-Semites talk about it. But it is a true moment where, Walter Cronkite was speaking live on television to Egyptian President Anwar Sadat. And they were looking at the pyramids. And Walter Cronkite said to Anwar Sadat, isn't it crazy that my ancestors were enslaved by your people to build those pyramids? And Anwar Sadat looked at him like, what in the world are you talking about? He'd never heard that before. Well, that's actually an important point. The reason that we think the Jews built the pyramids is because we saw a movie starring Charlton Heston called The Ten Commandments. It's not in the Bible anywhere. It never says the Jews who were, slaves in Egypt built the pyramids. It never says that. That's just something that Hollywood made up. They figured, the Jews are slaves in Egypt, according to the Old Testament. Well, I guess what would a slave in ancient Egypt do? I bet they built the pyramids. Well, they didn't. I mean, that's just like in Egypt, nobody thinks that Jewish slaves built the pyramids. It's largely contested whether the Jews were actually in Egypt or not. But even if you accept that the Jews were in Egypt, there's no one claims that the Jews built the pyramids. So the idea, when Walter Cronkite said to Anwar Sadat, my people built the pyramids, Anwar Sadat said, what? He'd never heard that before because he had not seen the Hollywood movie, right? That's in a Hollywood movie. And they made another movie, The Prince of Egypt, that said the same thing, that, the Jews built the pyramids when they were slaves in Egypt. That is only in Hollywood. Is that true? That's not in the Bible. That's not historically. That's just something that, it could have happened. There were pyramids in ancient Egypt, and the Bible says that the Jews were in ancient Egypt, though there's many historians who think that maybe they had it confused with another place or something, but regardless, the Bible says the Jews were slaves in Egypt, and there were pyramids in ancient Egypt, so therefore the Jews built them. Well, that's an assumption, right? But they have made endless Hollywood movies of, before Moses frees the Jews, he builds the pyramids, and that didn't happen. And that's something that, that a lot of black nationalists talk about. And it's all very interesting. It's very interesting. I don't know. You asked about black conservatives, and I'm just telling you that that's a big category. And that right there is why the left doesn't get it, right? Like, if you can experience black conservatives, which I spent a lot of time around, like not just black conservatives, but black nationalist conservatives, you will see that what we think about left and right doesn't line up, right? I said on a previous stream here, Malcolm X could never have joined the Party of Socialism and Liberation because he was too socially conservative. This idea that, it's this weird thing the woke people do. If someone is oppressed, they must agree with me. False. That's not how things work, right? I remember I made a tweet a while back. It's funny. I've been canceled many, many times, right? The cancel machine has come after me many times, but the largest cancel I've ever gotten, which is interesting, was when I tweeted that, if you're opposed to abortion, if you're opposed to gay marriage, I might disagree with you, but you're still my comrade. And I got tweeted at in, the Humanist Report, and like thousands of people went at me about what a bad person I was for saying that. And many of them said, of course, a white man would say that. There's plenty of black people that are opposed to abortion, plenty of Latin people that are opposed to abortion, plenty of black people that are against gay marriage, plenty of black people that are against abortion. I just like, but of course a white man would say that. I think white men are more pro-gay marriage than men that are not white are, statistically, in the United States, right? There's a lot more social conservatism among people of color, but that doesn't match what woke people think. They think that socially conservative people are bad, and so a group of people they consider to be oppressed are good, so they could never do that. And that's not the case, right? And that is, and that applies to other things too, right? That is a really big mistake that is a big part of that kind of vengeance mindset that the left has, right? For example, there are a lot of bad people in prison. There's a lot of people in prison who are there because they did bad things. Now, would they have done those bad things if if they had grown up in better conditions? Obviously not. Statistically, people who go to prison tend to be poorer And, you know, people that are impoverished tend to be more involved in crime. But that doesn't change the fact that, you know, not every person who's locked up in our prison system is there because they're innocent, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that are in prison because they did bad things. Now, they wouldn't have done those bad things if they'd not been in poverty, but they still did those bad things, you know, and the conditions they were in led them to the point that they did some bad things. Well, you know, there's kind of that left liberal vengeance mindset often forgets that, right? It makes it sound like, well, you know, these are all just innocent people. Well, you know, every villain that you've ever met has a backstory. You know, that's that whole thing. They say, hurt people hurt people. That's true. Hurt people do hurt people. And if you've been hurt in your life, the person who hurt you was probably hurt. And that did not make it hurt any less when they hurt you. You know, and that's something that a lot of people have a little bit of a problem getting, that like, yes, you know, yes, the people who hurt you, you know, the people who, you know, commit armed robberies often become the kind of person who commits armed robberies because they grew up in poverty, because they were abused as children. Yeah. But if you're working in the liquor store and they walk in and point the gun in your face, that gun is still just as dangerous, and it's still just as traumatizing when that gun is pointed in your face as when, I mean, if they hadn't been grown up in poverty. And that, like, people don't get that, right? Hurt people can be victims because they're hurt, and they can turn around and hurt other people as well. And if you get into this mindset that if somebody is oppressed, they're good. No, actually. And in fact, if somebody has been horrendously treated in their life, if somebody's been abused, if someone has been a victim, they're actually, in a lot of ways, they're more likely to victimize you. Our criminal justice system, and John McCarthy is absolutely right, is completely fucked up. And the overwhelming majority of people in our prison system right now are there for victimless crimes, using drugs. They should not be locked up for that. And in a lot of cases, a lot of people that are imprisoned are just people who need mental health treatment. You know, I mean, one thing that we have done in this country, especially since the 90s, is we've criminalized being homeless. Right? So they make it illegal to sleep on a park bench, and they arrest somebody for sleeping on a park bench. And in a lot of ways, like, being a homeless person is illegal, right? And that's very wrong. So, yeah. So I don't know what more to say about it, but yeah, I mean, we can talk about that, but there is a lot of naivete, right? One thing that I am learning to get over is that we need to get everybody, our whole society, and social media, it just makes this worse. And some people, it's just a way they exist, right? And it has nothing to do with politics. Unfortunately, I think communist and leftist politics can make this worse. There's the notion that somehow if you can show the world that you have been victimized, that makes you good. That's not true. It's not true, right? And and that is something I see a lot on the left, in leftist circles, but it's beyond politics. There's a lot of people who go through their life as the righteous victim. They're walking around saying to themselves, the world has been unfair to me. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. And it's like this way to protect themselves. And that is an awful way to live. It's an awful way to live. You don't want to be a person who walks around thinking the world has been unfair to me. You don't want to be that type of person. The reality is the world has been unfair to you. And especially if you're not white, the world has been unfair to you. If you're a woman, the world has been unfair to you. You can think of many different ways the world has been unfair to you, and it has, right? And if you are of certain groups, the world has been more unfair to you than other people, and no one can deny that. And so I'm not here to tell any specific group, but I'm just speaking in general, right? I'm speaking to white men like myself. You don't want to be the type of person who gets into that trap, well, in my mind, this is my special thing. I get to say the world's been unfair to me. And that makes me special. That makes me good. That's something I can hang my hat on. You don't, that is a trap. If the world's been unfair to you, that sucks. And I'm sorry that happened to you. And, you know, and no one should belittle what you have been through. No one should act like what happened to you was no big deal. No, right? And no one should tell you, oh, just, you know, and I'm not saying this about the Palestinians. I'm not saying this, right? But I'm telling you that there is a mindset people get into where that becomes like a way they identify, right? And I mean, and that is really bad for you psychologically, right? I mean, there's somebody who is a white male who worked with us at one point in CPI. Not going to say who, and this guy had it in his head that no one has ever been poorer than he was. And I mean, this guy, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that much about the specifics of his upbringing, but it was just this constant, you know, and whenever he fought with anybody else, he would say, "You've never worked a day in your life." Well, yeah, other people have. They have worked days in their lives. You know, yeah, most of us have worked a day in our lives, a day or two, at least, maybe years, you know, but that was immediately, whenever he disagreed with somebody, he would immediately say, "You've never worked a day in your life." Yeah, you have. Yeah, we have, you know, and I realized for a while, and this person was very bitter, and this person was very negative, and eventually turned against our organization. And that was his brain damage, right? That was his victim complex. I am the poorest person who's ever existed. I grew up poor, which I guess he did. I mean, I'm not going to debate that. I don't doubt it. But he, like, that became a part of his identity, and that became his excuse to be negative, you know? To be bitter against everyone else, to see himself as an eternal victim, to have certain cycles in his life that he was stuck in. And it was just this, well, I grew up so poor. No one understands how poor I grew up in. I grew up in poverty. So therefore it was just like this thing that he had. Well, if that's you, right? And I mean, maybe it's not poverty. Maybe it's, you know, that you were abused or that you were a victim of a crime or whatever it is. I'm telling you, you want to get rid of that. And it's not easy. And me telling you, get rid of it is not going to make it go away. Right. I mean, but you don't want to get stuck in that mindset of the world's been unfair to me, because that becomes a place to hide. It becomes a place to hide through which you don't fix things in your life. And you just become very, very bitter. Right. And a lot of people do this. Look, there are members of my own family who are like this. There are people that I've met. This is not, and it's interesting because you know, people blame this on leftist politics, right? This is what the right accuses the left of being. But I know many, many deeply conservative people that are like this. They just don't politicize it, but they're like that, you know, they're deeply conservative. They vote Trump, they vote Republican, and they also just have this huge victim complex. You want to get over that. The idea that you get something by being a victim. Wrong. Right? You don't. Right? You don't, you know, if you're a victim, it means something bad happened to you. Well, you don't want bad things to happen to you. You want good things to happen to you. And if you make your own identity about something bad happened to me, if you relate to other people with the understanding of something bad happened to me, or I had negative experiences and you don't understand, and I want you to acknowledge what I've been through, that is a very toxic cycle to get into. It's a very, very toxic cycle. You're going to be a very unhappy person. I mean, there's no other way to put it, right? You don't want to be that person. And I have met people from all different walks of life who get into that trap. It is a neurosis, right? Freudian psychoanalysis says there's two types of mental illness: psychosis and neurosis. Psychosis is you're so upset and you're so unwell that you're not processing information. You're seeing patterns that are not there, right? That's schizophrenics, people that are hearing voices, etc. And that's very rare, right? And those are people that you know, I mean, are need to be hospitalized. They're not in touch with reality. They're hearing voices. They're whatever. That's very rare. However, the overwhelming majority of humanity is neurotic. I would say everyone is neurotic to some degree or other. And neurosis is the opposite of psychosis. Psychosis means you see patterns that are not there. Neurosis means you don't notice patterns that are there. And I think everyone, all of us, to some degree or other, are neurotic, meaning there are patterns in our lives that we are not aware of that make us unhappy. There are things that we do and mistakes that we keep making and ways of thinking that we keep repeating that lead to us being unhappy, and we don't notice them. And part of growing up and maturing and healing is that you become aware of your neurosis and move past it. No, I mean, I honestly, I give Sigmund Freud a lot of credit. I really do. I think Sigmund Freud has been really unfairly treated by history. We only remember him for the kooky stuff, right? There's so many things that Sigmund Freud said that we don't give credit for. For example, talk therapy. Sigmund Freud invented that. There was never talk therapy until Sigmund Freud showed up. The idea of a subconscious. No one ever thought we had a subconscious mind until Sigmund Freud showed up and said, we have a subconscious mind. There are many things that Sigmund, you know, the idea of projecting. You feel a certain way, and so you think other people feel that way because you really feel that way. And so you project it onto other people. These are all Freudian developments. And no one ever gives Freud credit for that. We think of Freud using cocaine, having sex with his own clients, you know, developing weird theories about, you know, gross sexual stuff. You know what I'm talking about. That's what we think of Sigmund Freud as. But really, Sigmund Freud, a lot of what he said was very, very brilliant, but no one had ever said it before. And there was a taboo that said you don't talk about sex, you don't talk about these things. So he was the first one to come along and say any of it, and it came out sounding a little bit kooky. And he was also trying to make money, right? So the more, it was kind of like BreadTube. It was kind of like social media. The more scandalous and weird it sounded, you know, there was no Dr. Phil back then, right? There was no TV show where people talked about their families and their relationships. So, you know, I mean, the more that he talked about families, relationships, things like that, you know, so I don't know. I actually do give Sigmund Freud a lot of credit. And I think the analysis of neurosis versus psychosis, I've observed that, right? I had a roommate who became psychotic. I had never been around someone who was psychotic before. And I was like, oh, that, and I understood it. There was a clear difference. I've known people that are depressed. I've known people that are, you know, have anxiety or manic depressive. But when my roommate became psychotic, that was something different. And then years later, I had a coworker who became psychotic. And that was also, right? They're not processing information. You know, so there you go. Anyway, that was a long, long rant about a lot of things. All right. Is Cynthia McKinney apologizing for Hitler? Like, what? Why are you asking me that? I haven't watched the video. I'm not going to watch it. Why are you asking me that? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, Hempcar, with due respect, right? I want to treat everyone like they have good intentions, but like, I really don't like, so you sent me some video that I'm not going to watch. Look, Cynthia McKinney says all kinds of things I don't agree with, you know, but she's a great person. I admire her for her heroic anti-imperialist stance, the way she stands up to the Israel lobby, the way she opposed war in Congress, the way she stood up for countries that are under attack by imperialism. And, you know, and it's like, so you sent me some video where it sounds like she said something. Like, what do you want me to do? You want me to go, oh my God, and then you want to run to her and say, Caleb said that. Stop that. Stop it. Right? If Cynthia McKinney said something about Hitler or something that is wrong, that's too bad. You know, and, you know, it wouldn't be the first thing that she's ever said that I don't agree with, but she's a great person. And we really need to get over this cancel culture. You know, people can be great in some ways and not great in other ways. And honestly, I don't even know what she said. I haven't watched the video. You know, and I don't come on here and tattle on somebody. Please don't do that. Right? Don't come on this stream and say, Caleb, you're friends with so-and-so, but did you know that they, don't do that. Don't. That's what this toxic internet culture is.
Well, Caleb, your friends was, it started like 2013, 2014. I'd start getting messages. Caleb, you should unfriend so-and-so. They're fascist adjacent. Caleb, you should block so-and-so. Stop that. Just stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Just stop it. That's that's all I got to say. I assume you have good intentions, Hempcar. I don't know what she said. I'm not my admiration for Cynthia McKinney is not because of anything that she's ever said about German history in the 20th century. It's for all the great work that she has done on behalf of the Black community, on behalf of the people around the world that oppose Israel, in solidarity with Cuba, opposing the prison industrial complex. Cynthia McKinney is a great woman, and don't come on here and tattle on her, right? I'm not interested in that. I really am not. The young woman in the video, this is Deha Ko, he says, the young woman in the video you featured as an ideal candidate for political education through TPI. I agree. I think she has a lot to learn. The toxicity she's referring to is likely what trends on social media, degeneracy, OnlyFans, and porn. Okay. But, what makes you say that, Deha? She did have a nose ring, right? A lot of times people with nose rings and woke people are very, very much in favor of porn, right? And they think it's liberating and that, like, OnlyFans, women get to be their own boss. And, not necessarily. It's possible that's what she meant. It could be that she's, that she is opposed to that kind of thing, but I don't know. I wouldn't guarantee that, in my experience, young women of that age who have that particular look often are very, very, what they call pro-sex in their perspective. So I wouldn't assume that necessarily, Deha, but you might be right. You might be right. I don't know. And yeah, I agree that she's a prime person, and that's a stage that we all have to go through. I was where she was at one point. It was just hate this country, hate its culture, but if you want to build a real movement, right? You want to build a real movement, you got to have a different approach, but hopefully she comes around. Hopefully she comes around. That's all I can say. But yeah, what are your books? What books do you recommend on the history of DPRK? All right, get ready. First of all, there's this one, which is Korea Division, Reunification, and U.S. Foreign Policy by Martin Hart Landsberg. This is a good one. Next, there's a book called North Korea, Another Country by Dr. Bruce Cummings. That one is also very good. Korea's Place in the Sun by Dr. Bruce Cummings is also very good. There's this book, right? Everyday Life in the North Korean Revolution by Susie Kim, 1945 to 1950. This is also a very good book. Those are the three books that, off the top of my head, I would name on the history of North Korea. Those are the three books I would recommend. All right, so those are the Rumble Rant questions. So now we have 5 super chats to go through. If you have any more super chats, by all means, please send them. Oh, also, I will be on early morning, 8:15 a.m. tomorrow. I've got an early morning tomorrow. I'm going on Jamarl Thomas's show at 8:15. So tune in for that. Should be good. The establishment wanted George Bush to win the Republican primary in 1980, but LaRouche sent organizers from all over the country to New Hampshire to disrupt Bush events that helped Reagan win. Yes. And I will say, I mean, he's kind of gone off his rocker. He's not where I'm at these days on a lot of issues. But I will say I learned a lot from this book, The Unauthorized Biography of George Bush by Webster Tarpley. This is actually a very well-researched book. A lot of information on here. When you talk about the Eastern establishment, the Anglo-American establishment and the circles of power in the United States and all of this, this book is very, very good. A lot of information. I didn't know. There's a lot in here I did not know. Did you know Mao and George Herbert Walker Bush met? They had one meeting.
I didn't know that. That's fascinating. Never comes up. Yeah, but George Bush and Mao had a meeting. George Bush lived in China for a year as the director of the Office of U.S. Affairs. Before the USA and China officially established diplomatic relations, there was an office in China to handle, it was the U.S. Foreign Interests Office. George Bush directed it. I didn't know that, right? This book, you can learn a lot. Webster Tarpley, who was the leader of the LaRouche movement in the 90s, he wrote this book, The Unauthorized Biography of George Bush. It's very good. It's very, very well researched, and you'll learn a lot in this book about a lot of different things, about Yale, about the Nazis and their ties with various sections of the American establishment, about New England old money and intelligence. And this is a very good book. I actually learned a lot from this book. And this was the LaRouche people put this book out. Webster Tarpley was a LaRouche follower when he wrote this book. It's a very good book. And he gets into the Jimmy Carter stuff in that book. He gets into the primary and, and how Reagan and Bush were enemies, and how Bush was kind of forced onto the ticket. And then, basically through the assassination attempt, on the life of Reagan, Bush kind of asserted control over Reagan. The fascinating stuff. So, yeah. All righty. Do you think Trump will save TikTok for us, Caleb? A lot of people think he will. Trump says he has a soft spot in his heart for TikTok. TikTok is just very popular. Polls show that Americans don't buy the idea that TikTok is a conspiracy from China that needs to be outlawed. Americans just don't buy that. Americans don't want TikTok to be outlawed. So I think Trump wants to be remembered well in history. And I think, from what I understand, the head of TikTok is coming to his inauguration or something. And looks to me like Donald Trump very well may save TikTok, but I don't know. We'll see. I did want to show you all this, right? First of all, I can't wait to go watch this PSL person who's mad at me called Galloway. I can't wait to see that. That's awesome. But while we're on this topic, I don't know, just because they're doing a bad thing on Monday, I did want to go after PSL for this. This video, this just goes to tell you, right? They have all these little videos on the PSL, social media. And some of them are just so cringe, and so wrong. And here's this one, right? We all know that Facebook no longer has fact checkers, and that's a good thing, because the fact checkers were pro-imperialist and they banned RT and they banned dissident views. Well, who is mad that Facebook no longer has fact checkers to tell us to be pro-imperialist? PSL.
Anybody else find it so disturbing that the weaseliest person on the planet, Mark Zuckerberg, has just unilateral authority to reshape how the world communicates, how the world is getting its information and communicating with one another? In case you missed it, Mark Zuckerberg, in a very transparent ploy to placate Trump and to get on his good side and to basically say, I'm down to be Elon Musk 2.0, he eliminated fact-checking. He eliminated fact-checking.
No! Oh my God! We better riot on Inauguration Day. Let's burn down DC and torch a bunch of cars, because we got to make sure that RT videos get banned, and that anyone who says anything critical of the vaccine gets their views banned, for spreading conspiracy theories. Oh my God! No! Oh my God! What are we gonna do? They got rid of fact checking on Facebook. Oh my God. This is the party that wanted longer lockdowns. Do you know how many pro-Cuba groups have been banned from Facebook? Do you know how many people have been banned from Facebook? Unbelievable, right? This is a group that claims to be anti-imperialist.
Eliminated diversity programs from.
Oh no, they eliminated diversity programs. Oh my God. So the person who bans your account won't be Black or queer or transgender. Oh my God. Not only did they get rid of fact checkers, they got rid of diversity oh no, how are we going to handle this? We're going to have a double riot on Inauguration Day. Oh my God, Brian Becker must be seething. How awful. Oh man.
Meta, he's moving the content moderation center of Meta from California to Texas.
Not Texas. Why, Texas is an evil state. Everyone who lives in the entire state of Texas is a racist neo-Nazi. Everyone knows that California, where Hollywood is, and Silicon Valley, that's good, but Texas, oh my God, he moves it to Texas. Not only do they get rid of fact checkers, not only do they not practice diversity, now they're moving to the evil state of Texas. Oh my God.
He is loosening hate speech and
he's loosening hate speech. Oh wow. Loosening hate speech restrictions. How are these people anti-imperialist in any conceivable way? I mean, this party claims to be a party that is aligned with China, claims to be a party that's aligned with North Korea. These people are nothing but pro-imperialist. Ugh. I don't want to use foul language on here, but it's like, and of course they're going to go riot for NATO when Trump gets elected. How can these people think what they believe has anything to do with what they believe in Nicaragua, anything to do with what they believe in Cuba or Vietnam or China or any of these countries? They are just Democrats. They're just a bunch of fucking Democrats. That's all they are.
Restrictions. I mean, it's so obvious that he's just fine with making Meta whatever will be palatable to Donald Trump and allow him to keep making his money. And
keep in mind, this isn't just a member of PSL. This is an official PSL video. Mad that Facebook isn't fact-checking anti-imperialist views and labeling them conspiracy theories. Mad that they moved their headquarters to Texas because everybody knows Texas is an evil right-wing conservative state. Cowboy hats are racist.
It's just very disturbing because
it's just so disturbing.
Are world shaping, important now platforms for our society to share information, to get news, to get
Folks, if I had thought this was what a communist was, I would never have become a communist. I mean, my anger at these people is massive because I am somebody who my entire adult life was defined by the fact that when I was a young person, I got interested in communism because I believed in economic development, because I opposed war and imperialism. And I made a lot of sacrifices and dedicated myself to this movement. And this movement at this point is taken over by these fucking evil people, these fucking evil rich kid Democrats. And and it's I'm sorry, but and then they're wondering why so many working class people hate communism. I hate that. And if that's communism, I hate it. I am against that. Whatever is in that video, I am against it. Right. I'm with the people of Russia. I'm with the people of Donbass that are fighting imperialism. I am with the people in Yemen. I am with the people in Venezuela and Vietnam. And I am not with that cringe. Makes me mad. Makes me mad. And it should make you mad too. That's, what I have given my life to, the struggle against imperialism and all of that, which I thought, communism was the label on what I believed in. Communism has become synonymous with that disgusting crap. I just, and it's frustrating to me. And that's why we've dropped the word communism, because that's what people think a communist is. And I'm not that, and I don't ever want to be that. I have no interest in that, and I never want to sit in a room with that ever again. I spent so much time trying to maneuver around that and trying to, take action for what I believe in and being in the same room as that, and I want nothing to do with that, and I will never compromise with that ever again. Anyway, next question. what do you think about Secretary Scott Bessent? I don't know much about him. I'll be honest. I've seen the same reports you've seen. The only people in Trump's cabinet that I am excited about are Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, RFK, and Matt Gaetz. And I guess Matt Gaetz is going to be the special counsel investigating the FBI. That's who I'm excited about. Everyone else is just kind of, I know that I forget who she is. There's somebody who's said some stuff about Ukraine. That's I know there's somebody who said some stuff about Ukraine that there's some other people who've talked about Ukraine in a good way. But really, when it gets down to who am I excited about in the Trump White House, those folks. All right. Hey, bro. Thought it was food for the first 100 people. Now it's 50. What happened? We negotiated with the hotel. That's what happened. It's always a negotiation at these kinds of events, right? So we had a food minimum we had to pay. We paid it. And we thought we got this much food, and we actually got that much food. And look, that's how these things happen, right? I hope we get 50 people at our event. I don't know that we will get that. At this point, it's mainly an online thing. You're welcome to come. If you can come, I hope to see you there. But it's mainly an online event. I hope people come. We will have leaflets, to hand out. But at this point, it's mainly an online thing. So come and get the food to be there in person. Come and hear the speeches and watch online, or come and be there, right? We have food for 50 people. Hope you can be there. But yeah, the room holds 200 people from what I understand. The room holds up to 200 people. But as of now, we will have food for 50. So if we get 50 people, I'm happy. 50 people is plenty. And what I don't want to happen is a bunch of people coming thinking they will get free food and not getting it. That's not good. So, that's kind of where I'm at. At first I thought we would have food for 100 people. Then it became clear we could only, if we wanted to have good food, not just hors d'oeuvres or something like that, we had to have food for 50 people. Okay. But that means that, my concern, I'm not expecting this to be a huge event. It's not going to be, but I don't want there to be a situation where there's like 100 people there thinking they're going to get free food and there's no more food left. That would not be a good situation. So we'll see. We're doing this. It's really important that we're in the streets of DC. It's really important that, Jamarl Thomas have a platform, Garland Nixon have a platform, Reverend Stevens has a platform, Wilmer Leon has a platform. It's really important that we have this event, that we're in the streets with our banner, that we have this event near the White House. And if more people come, great. But I'm not expecting it to be huge. And I would like us to have exactly 50 people. That's what I'm aiming for. If we have exactly 50 people there and we all get to eat good food and we all get to have speeches, great. Other than that, yeah. So, but if more than 50 come, we can house them. We can not house them, but we can have them there, but we can't, there's not going to be food for them. So, but yeah, that's how things go. A lot of people, when you deal with event spaces, right? One thing that's very common when you're dealing with event spaces is, they'll tell you, oh, you can do the event, you'll pay for the event. And then right before the event, they come back to you and say, well, actually, we need you to pay this much. I've been organizing events for a long time and I know how these things work. So we wouldn't have had food at all. Let me just tell you, we wouldn't have had food at all. If we could have gotten away with it, if we could have just rented the venue and had the event there, we wouldn't have had food at all. However, we had to meet the food minimum. So we're going to have food. So that's how these things work. But yeah, there you go. What are your thoughts on the foreign policy of the new government? Well, he seems to have already helped a peace deal come into existence in Israel and Palestine. Let's hope he does the same for Ukraine. And let's hope that he restarts peace talks on the Korean Peninsula, right? I believe it is our job to try and, move this country away from the danger of a new world war and away from the low-wage police state. So anything that might move us in that direction is fine. There we go. Could you react to this article? It's hilarious. Yes. All right. Let's react to this article. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. All right. Civil rights era abuses could return under Kash Patel. With the recent start of the 119th Congress, the imminent beginning of the second Trump administration, key nominations are drawing attention with particular concern over Kash Patel's nomination to be director of the FBI. To be sure, there is much concern about Patel's record, including his promises to come after journalists, his presumed devotion to carrying out Trump's vows of retribution, and his enemy list of the deep state. Oh boy. This threat is not theoretical, but rather is one we've seen materialize in a dark chapter of our nation's history, COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO was the deep state. Kash Patel is an enemy of the FBI. Oh, God. It's like they can spin anything. Like Kash Patel is coming in to restrain the FBI. And this is... Okay. I mean, this is... It's frustrating. I mean, it's like, how long until they say that COINTELPRO is a conspiracy theory? That's what I want to know. How long until the Facebook fact checkers say COINTELPRO never happened? You know? The totally not political FBI. I mean, it's like, who raided the homes of the Uhuru movement? That was Biden. You know, and it's just like, I don't know. It's like everything they were accusing Trump of doing, jailing his political opponents, they did that. Hundreds of them. Hundreds of Trump supporters, Trump himself, the Uhuru movement, targeting journalists, they did that. I mean, it's like everything they accused Trump of maybe doing, he didn't do when he was in office the first time, and they were actively doing at the time. You know, and it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. But look, folks, I want to focus on the good. I do have an early morning tomorrow. But I will answer any more super chats that people have. But now I'm going to put on the end of the year message, right? Because I want to show you why we exist. There's a reason that our community exists, right? This is why we exist. And I am super, super proud of all the work that we have done as an organization. So watch this video and see why CPI exists. And if you have any more questions after this, I will answer them. So think of any more questions you want to ask me. Hey everybody, it feels good to win. And that's why I'm proud to say that the year of 2024 has been a year of victory for the Center for Political Innovation. I said last year when I gave my annual report that in 2023 we did more than any other year in our existence. And this year I can say the same thing because the activity of the Center for Political Innovation has more than doubled in the year of 2024. Let me just go over some of the highlights of what we accomplished this year. January 7th, the Center for Political Innovation held a national day of action to stand in solidarity with Yemen. Protests were held in Portland, in Humboldt County, California, Chicago, and in New York. January 26th, we published a book, Who Are the Houthis and What Are They Fighting For? This book provided a history of the Ansar Allah movement and its origins. On February 15th, we convened an official press conference at the United Nations, announcing the American delegation of the World Youth Festival. At our press conference, we highlighted the Uhuru 3 and expressed our concerns about facing similar retaliation for attending an international gathering in Russia. We took questions from the UN Press Corps, and the event created a splash in international media. February 29th to March 7th, CPI led the United States delegation to the World Youth Festival in Sochi, Russia. 3 of our members participated in the festival, and 2 of us spoke directly with Russian President Vladimir Putin during the last day at a special session. Our remarks focused on how we could work to improve relations and integrate the United States into the new alternative economy emerging around the world as the Western financial system declines. March 15th to 17th, we acted as official observers of the Russian election. During that election, we gave eyewitness to the massive public support that the government has as the war in Ukraine continued and the NATO imperialists have maneuvered against them. April 26th through 29th, 30 people attended a CPI workshop in Vermont entitled Out of the Movement to the Masses. We published a new textbook for the gathering, reviewing the history of anti-imperialism and exploring how an effective anti-imperialist movement could be created in our time. On May 26th, we were invited as guests to the Libertarian Party's National Convention in Washington, D.C., where U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump was welcomed as a guest speaker. For the convention, we published 1,000 copies of this pamphlet, Do You Believe in Growth, and distributed them all throughout the convention hall. The pamphlet explains our anti-imperialist perspective, and it's pretty fair to say we reached a lot of people. June 7th, the Center for Political Innovation co-sponsored an event at the Los Angeles Family Church dedicated to the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. 100 people attended the event, people of diverse backgrounds, all focused on how it was we could improve U.S. relations with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. On July 22nd, our book, Kamala Harris and the Future of America, was suddenly banned from Amazon.com without any warning. Now, the book had been written 4 years prior, and the censorship occurred just as Kamala Harris became the Democratic Party's presumptive nominee. The sudden ban sparked outrage on social media, leading to an explosion of interest in the book. Over 3,000 copies were sold in the following days, and Amazon did restore the book 7 days later. August 19th to 22nd, the Center for Political Innovation team of volunteers distributed books at the Democrat National Convention. We printed 1,000 new copies of the book Kamala Harris and the Future of America and handed them out, along with 1,000 copies of our pamphlet called Do You Believe in Growth? We made our mark at the event, ensuring that our perspective was heard by protesters, Democratic Party members, and others. September 3rd, CPI members attended the opening of the Uhuru 3 trial in federal court in Tampa. CPI addressed the press before the trial began alongside Jill Stein, Pam Africa, and New York State Assemblyman Charles Barron. On September 28th, CPI co-sponsored the second Rage Against the War Machine rally in Washington, D.C., as we did for the first rally back in February of 2023. This anti-war gathering, organized by the Libertarian Party and the People's Party, was extremely important, and we are very proud that we stepped up to become official sponsors of the event. On October 2nd, we launched our Peace MAGA operation, kicking off at Trump Tower. For the final month of the election, CPI members unfurled a large banner of Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un shaking hands, along with the words, "Only peace can make America great again." We took to the streets of New York City, loudly promoting this message, highlighting hopes for peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula and amplifying the best parts of Trump's message. October 12th, CPI held an all-day workshop in Chicago. The event was attended by 25 people and included strategic discussions for the fight ahead. October 27th, CPI's Peace MAGA operation attended Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden. We engaged thousands of Trump supporters outside of the event, and our banner was even noticed by The New Yorker that highlighted Peace MAGA in their coverage. On October 30th, CPI member Penny Arcos confronted U.S. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
We would like to know as American people why you continue to support sending billions of taxpayer dollars to Nazis in Ukraine to start a nuclear war with Russia. China is not our enemy.
I need you to leave, please, ma'am.
China's not our enemy. Russia's not our enemy. No more money for rich men's wars.
Take your stuff.
No more money for rich men's wars. No more money for rich men's wars.
On November 2nd, the Center for Political Innovation participated in the Black is Back March in Washington, D.C. to support the Uhuru movement. November 23rd, the Center for Political Innovation released our letter to President-elect Donald Trump, urging him to become a peace president who stands against the war makers and the emerging low-wage police state. The video has been viewed by hundreds of thousands of people across various platforms. December 16th, CPI attended the sentencing hearing of the Uhuru 3 in Tampa's federal court. We were overjoyed that after being acquitted of the main charge of acting as foreign agents, the Uhuru defendants did not receive any jail time or fines. They expect to overturn their conviction on appeal soon. Needless to say, this has been a big year for the Center for Political Innovation. We exposed Kamala Harris for what she truly is, a sadistic narcissist who would have been very dangerous if she ever entered the Oval Office. In addition to that, we amplified the pro-peace aspects of Trump's message. Furthermore, we raised the Uhuru 3 case as loudly as we could, not only in the United States, but at the United Nations and in Russia. We won so many victories this year because through our relentless work, we are giving voice to what the overwhelming majority of the American people want: economic justice, freedom, and an end to the wars. Our organization possesses a clear understanding of what stands in the way, and that is the system of globalism imperialism. And with our clear understanding, we can lead the fight. This year has been a year of very significant changes in our organization. We liquidated the nonprofit for legal reasons. We are now incorporated as an LLC in the U.S. state of Texas. We made the decisive choice to break with leftover Cold War ideology and clarify that our view, known as innovationism, represents an entirely new stage. Additionally, we have begun defining ourselves in opposition to the toxic trend called fandom, which traps people in a negative cycle of social media cynicism rather than building the communities of solidarity and networks of resistance that are urgently needed. So what's next? Well, we're headed to Washington, D.C. for Donald Trump's inauguration. Not to join the protesters, but to engage with MAGA supporters and continue to highlight our message of peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula, as well as the need to build the Peace Bridge, connecting Alaska to Russia over the Bering Sea. We have scheduled a big reception for Inauguration Day, January 20th, featuring free food, music, entertainment, speeches, and much more. Our event will take place just a few blocks from the White House. Please join us in Washington, D.C. If you can't make it, please donate to our inauguration fund to help us cover the costs of this big event. We are also excited to announce that on July 12, 2025, we will hold our national convention in Chicago, Illinois. The event, titled Working Families First, Defeat the Deep State, Embrace a New World of Peace and Innovation, will take place near Chicago O'Hare Airport in an auditorium where we expect to gather no fewer than 400 people. This will be the flagship anti-imperialist and anti-globalist event of the year, sending a message of patriotism, solidarity with countries that are under attack, opposition to the emerging low-wage police state, demands for a new growth-oriented economy, and a celebration of the love and passion that holds our movement together. We need you in Chicago, July 12th, 2025. We want to thank everyone who has donated to the Center for Political Innovation. Rest assured that your contributions have been put to good use. If you have not yet rejoined since our incorporation, we encourage you to sign up on the website and once again start paying dues. If you're not yet a member, please register today. Upon signing up, you'll receive invitations to our weekly online membership meetings, and you can connect with other local members in your area. There is much to do in the coming months. If Trump fulfills his promise to take on the FBI and promote peace around the world, we must support these efforts. This is not about offering blind allegiance. It is about building a grassroots movement to back up and encourage any positive action from above. We are prepared to support Tulsi Gabbard as a key anti-war voice as Trump brings her in as intelligence director.
She also has some connections to the Center for Political Innovation, which is a very pro-Russian outfit run by a man called Caleb Maupin.
We stand ready to support Donald Trump and his efforts to restrain the FBI, to improve relations with North Korea, and to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine. The danger of war against Iran remains a primary concern, as many voices within the upcoming administration hold troubling perspectives on the Middle East. We will continue to stand with Palestine and oppose U.S. aid to Israel. For us, America first does not mean Israel first. U.S. funding of Israel's continued crimes against the Palestinians must cease immediately. We also plan to launch mass distributions of our book, Who Are the Houthis and What Are They Fighting For?, at Palestine protests around the country. We want to educate people about the origins of the Ansar Allah movement and put them in touch with our anti-imperialist, pro-American, and pro-working class perspective, a populist view that is rarely heard in left-wing circles. We are proud to say that our organization played a very significant role in ensuring that the Uhuru Three, Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, and Omali Yeshitela, did not go to prison. From the start, we recognized how dangerous their prosecution as foreign agents for their anti-imperialist activism and development in the black community really was. While the majority of the online left abandoned the Uhuru Three, we stood with them. We have principles, and we will never stand by while the state targets anti-imperialist voices.
Did I say anything about the Center for Political Innovation? I want to, because these comrades were some of the first out of the gate. When this attack happened, they were first out of the gate. They didn't ask any questions or anything like that. They were the first out of the gate, and not only in words. They began to take actions everywhere they were located. We can see the actions they were involved in, defending the Uhuru Three and opposed to what the FBI was doing to us, trying to do to us. And they understood the relationship that it had to the whole question of free speech for everybody.
The Center for Political Innovation is completely unique. We are focused on solidarity, optimism, and comradeship in a time of pervasive cynicism, pessimism, and nihilism. Our work is essential. We offer a light in the darkness and a hope in a time of widely engineered hopelessness. We need you to join our ranks and become a member, to donate and support our work, to promote our work online, and attend our in-real-life events and gatherings. If one thing is clear, it's that we will not surrender. No matter what obstacles we face, we will not back down. Our mantra remains, dare to struggle, dare to win. And one thing is clear, if you look back at all we've accomplished this year, and if you look ahead to all the exciting plans we have coming up in the year of 2025, it's pretty clear that we are winning. Happy New Year.
All right. So if you haven't joined CPI, it's time to join. And if you're heading to Washington, D.C., that'd be great. Love to see you there. We're going to have a nice event. And, good food, good speeches. It'll be broadcast online. We're doing a lot of stuff throughout the day to get our message out there, to have our presence. I'm really excited.
So yeah, our community is amazing. We have done amazing things. We're changing the course of history. So thank you all. Tune in tomorrow morning pretty early. I'll be on Jamarl Thomas's show at 8:15. Yeah, so I guess that kind of, no one seems to have any more super chats, and it is almost 1 a.m. and I do have to be up for an 8:15 show. So yeah, I guess on that note, we can wrap this up. Yeah, so I guess we'll conclude. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.